But I think the development of full artificial intelligence will spell the end of the human race.
It's a flying object and we don't know what it is. I would hope somebody's checking it out.
With the rockets or whatever, but incredibly fast, opposite direction. It was too fast to be an airplane.
I'm glad the Pentagon is looking at this, because if it poses a threat, I want them on top of it.
Well, the craft generates its own gravitational field.
You said there's lights in the sky?
The internet has become the command center for criminals and terrorists.
911, what's your emergency? I need help, please help me!
Aliens won't let it happen. You know, that's what we're instructed to say.
Roswell, Area 51. Alien kept deep under the ground.
1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 6, 3, 2, 9, 7.
Doesn't have your best interest in mind. The government is self-serving. You're here for a reason. You're listening to Troubled Minds Radio. Broadcasting live from a secret bunker just off the extraterrestrial highway. Somewhere in the desert sands outside of Las Vegas. From somewhere in space-time, loosely labeled Generation X on planet Earth. And asking questions of you in earnest into the digital darkness. Good evening and welcome to Troubled Minds Radio. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, Twitter, Twitch, DLive, and Kick. We are broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. And of course, 88.4 FM, Auckland, New Zealand. And tonight, got a doozy for you. Hey, I've been thinking about it. Like I said before we started there, I was listening to those AI episodes. If you guys have been enjoying those on the podcast feed, thank you for listening. Appreciate that. It's pretty good. It's pretty high quality. But there's, as usual, some of these write-ups with the brainstorming sessions, they have some really enlightening tidbits built into these things that are very, sometimes if you're not paying attention, you don't notice them. And well, I was noticing that there's that old narrative, right? There's an old narrative that goes back. Again, it's the last two AI episodes on Friday, and today it hit on the podcast feed. But it's basically going back into the story of, what's his name? Crowley, right? Crowley, the magician, and that Amalantra working and leaving the gate, the portal open, and then aliens becoming sort of a cultural phenomenon sort of after that, and kind of ties back into Lamb, that entity. Super cool, right? I mean, narrative-wise, I think it's fantastically compelling. I think it's massively interesting. There's a lot of really, really cool things that really stick out there in my mind. However, I was listening to it, and it turns out that a lot of the stuff that's really been echoed in that is the modern retelling of every tale ever. Once again, right? Back to the old Joseph Campbell stuff and the Carl Jung stuff, the archetypes of humanity and the hero with 1,000 faces. But I recognized, and we'll get to this in the probably back half of the show, but I recognized that there's an individual by the name of Jacques Vallée. Many of you have heard of him. He is very notable in the UFO community. He's written many books and trying to figure out the nature of the reality, the nature of the UFO aspect, okay? And it fits really well into that Crowley, Lamb, alien narrative because, and shout out to Derek the Night Stalker out there. I'm not sure if he's listening tonight, but he pointed this out quite a ways, I don't know, a while ago, like maybe a year, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years. It's been a good run here. We've been doing some good stuff together, all of the amazing callers. And Derek pointed out specifically that there's with Jacques Vallée, he wrote a book called Passport to Magonia. Okay. And I always get it wrong. Every time he brings it up, I want to say passport to Patagonia, right? Because, well, Magonia is not a real place. That's why. And so your brain, as the large language model in the black box, tries to fill in the things. And anyway, so I digress there. But the point is that whole narrative with Crowley and Lamb and the rest, it seems like we're dealing with a proto-trickster spirit of sorts, okay? And Passport to Magonia by Jacques Vallée is specifically a retelling of like the Fey realm, of the proto-trickster spirit that I'm describing, of this exact thing that Crowley supposedly let into our realm, Lamb, which Lamb, as you guys know, was not just the name of an entity. Lamb was supposedly the name of a race of entities. It was a race of beings together. Shout out Bailey on that one. I didn't know that either. Again, learning lots of things from all you amazing people. And so the thing is this, right? I was listening to this and I thought, wait, so if you're telling me that in the sense of, let's say, Joseph Campbell and the hero with 1,000 faces, that we're actually dealing with the opposite of that, the actual exact opposite in terms of a proto-trickster spirit, which means, and hold on and let me try and frame this in my mind so I get this right. But the whole point of the hero with 1,000 faces is us overcoming our own challenges, okay? And again, you go to Luke Skywalker, you go to basically every tale ever told mythologically and in folklore many times as well. There is that human overcoming all these obstacles, okay? And losing faith and then, meeting a mentor and all kinds of stuff, okay? It's built into that hero's journey, that hero's cycle. And so I was thinking about it, and you know me and my ideas when I go, well, let's turn this upside down and make it the inverse. I thought about it and I was like, wait a minute then. So are we actually dealing with the exact same aspect of ourselves, sort of that shadow archetype of Carl Jung, in the same sense of the, not the protagonist, but the, what's the word for it? The other antagonist of the bad guy, right? The antagonist, meaning the villain with 1,000 faces, which means a lot of things. There's a lot of implications here, of course. And I did check, and I don't think there's any basis for this quite yet. So we're out on a limb, a little bit on a limb. Okay. Except, just combining ideas, which you know me, I love to do. I love to kind of, let's say, I don't know about make stuff up is the wrong word, but combine ideas and sort of forge paths that maybe haven't been tread just yet. So it's a good time to add all the disclaimers. All the disclaimers apply. There's no truth to be found here. Nothing happening other than ideas and kind of trying to peer around corners, peer over the horizon, look into the future, and maybe guess what's next for humanity. Okay. So if you're here for truth, you're in the wrong place. Turn on the vice presidential debate. Those guys know all the truth. They will tell you all the truth. And anyway, I was watching part of that until I shut it off because these talking heads are just grotesque to the nth degree. But I digress again. Okay, but here's the deal, right? So I was reading it or listening to that fantastic AI episode. By the way, tell me you can't tell that's not AI Mike or vice versa, whatever, right? But anyway, let me start with this. So time-wise, good. Okay, so Joseph Campbell's The Hero with 1,000 Faces lays out the universal archetype of the hero's journey, a cyclical path that appears in myths and stories across cultures. This is straight from the write-up. At its core, the hero represents the individual's struggle for transformation, often encountering trials, allies, and supernatural forces before returning enlightened. And Campbell's model serves as a reflection of our inner desire for growth, embodying hope, courage, and the journey towards self-realization, which we talk about often on this show, what it means to be human, okay, and what this looks like in the larger context, outside of the, the daily drabbery of just, waking up and paying bills. You are a tax slave. You are a tax slave. You are a tax slave. Don't worry. I haven't broken. The matrix isn't broken. Repetition is what is it? I digress. Anyway, is the most basic form of brainwashing. You are a tax slave. You are a tax slave. Oh, sorry, don't get me started on taxes. Anyway, Carl Jung's influence on Campbell can't be understated. Now let's combine these ideas, not just the hero with 1,000 faces, overcoming adversity, all this stuff. But Jung's theory of archetypes suggests that these recurring symbols, the hero, the wise mentor, the shadow, are manifestations of the collective unconscious, a deep layer of the human psyche shared across all cultures and times. Okay, great. We've talked about that before, right? The hero's journey, then, is not just an external adventure, but an internal one, representing the psychological transformation that occurs when confronting the unknown parts of ourselves. Now, if the hero's journey is about facing and integrating the unknown aspects, then the villain with 1,000 faces flips that narrative. Rather than seeking enlightenment, the villain's role is to embody the darker aspects of human consciousness, the fears, the repressed desires, and the chaos lurking beneath society's surface. The hero and the villain are two sides of the same archetypal coin. While the hero represents the conscious quest for growth, the villain represents the subconscious forces that resist it, which means, of course, you know exactly what that means because you're all very smart people, is that we're always in our own way. That regardless of where we are, let's say we've won, whatever that means, right? Take the life of things, the life force, the journey, whatever it is, the hero's journey. You won. You beat Darth Vader, right? You conquered the bad guy, your shadow self. You faced it and you've persevered and you've won. Well, now what? Well, we create another antagonist, don't we? We create another villain. Anyway, I'm getting way ahead of myself here, but that's the idea tonight. That's what's on my mind. And not just, let's say, with the narrative of something like Crowley, Lamb, the aliens that got into the zeitgeist. And now suddenly we have this proto-trickster spirit that is morphing to whatever we need it to be. And so, of course, as usual, the bizarre part is how much of this is us and how much of this is external to us. And that's about where my mind is at tonight, all over the place, as you can tell, which usually is about spot on for where Troubled Minds is. But that's what's happening. So I got some questions for you, which I'll ask as soon as we get back. And there's a lot to this because we're turning the entire hero's journey narrative on its head and looking at this in different ways. And that's, well, the point of all this. But if you want to be part of the show tonight, we are taking your calls at 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org and we'll put you on the show. It's as easy as that. But before we do any of that, and let's get a quick word from our sponsor. In this case, it is Human Inspiration. Don't go anywhere, more Troubled Minds. In exactly 1 minute, we will be right back. In a world increasingly shaped by AI, human inspiration remains the beating heart of creativity. Alien Skin by Tremble, a hauntingly beautiful piano ballad, reminds us that while algorithms can mimic art, the raw, unfiltered emotions of human experience are irreplaceable.
So here I sit, locked in my room again.
Written and composed by Jesse Ian in collaboration with Todd Smith, this progressive masterpiece delves into the depths of internalized grief and the silent toll of artistic compromise. As AI reshapes our reality, Alien Skin stands as a testament to the timeless power of human emotion and the complex beauty that only true artists can evoke. Experience the haunting beauty of Alien Skin by Tremble and support human inspiration. Available now on iTunes. And welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm Michael Strange. Let us continue, shall we? Okay, now, in Campbell's hero myth, the villain often takes on a distinct form. Okay, back to this narrative foil. We're turning it on its head. We're turning the hero's journey on its head and looking at ourselves as our own foil in the vast many capacities here. But so the villain often takes on a distinct form. A dragon to be slain, a tyrant to be overthrown, or an evil empire to be dismantled. Okay, sounds very familiar, right? Archetypal enemies. Yet, the villain is rarely just a physical obstacle. It symbolizes the deeper internal struggles the hero must overcome. The villain, with 1,000 faces in this case, takes this a step further. Here, the villain doesn't just oppose the hero. It shifts and morphs, adapting to each era's specific fears and anxieties, acting as a mirror to the collective unconscious, which we've talked about in the past. And it does fit into Lamb. Fits into that Crowley narrative, which again is, like I said, pretty compelling, pretty interesting, that you have this, the most evil man in the world or whatever that's opening these portals with these ritual sex magic and all this bizarre stuff, right? These ancient tomes from Abramelin and whatever he can find, and he's actually doing these things. Okay, it's like bad science, right? Because what's that? Was that the name of the movie from the 80s? Was it Bad Science? Something like that, right? And wow, I got to go back and watch that through the lens of Crowley. But anyway, you get my point, right? In that case, it was a good-looking young lady. They conjured, right? It was a weird science. Weird science is what it was called. But in this case, it was an entity. It was no such luck. It was an entity. And, well, I guess maybe looking at it from that perspective, maybe it's probably better that it wasn't the trickster in fair form, let's say. But okay, but you get the idea, right? The whole point of this is in, let's say, the early 1900s when Crowley was doing all this weird stuff, he was actually tapping into this, again, the archetypal villain, whatever this looks like, whatever we need for society to accept, to appreciate, to use as whatever's coming next. Because of course it has to get into the actual zeitgeist. We have to think about this. This has to become nightmare fuel, as we've described in the past. And this has to actually become a very, very synthesized idea for not just a person or 10 people or 100 people, for the masses, okay? Nightmares for the masses, nightmare fuel for the masses. But in this case, that villain was Lamb, okay? And now it is manifested into the gray alien and beyond, whatever comes next. If you look at modern times, like right now, I wouldn't say that, maybe the gray alien was the villain with 1,000 faces back in 1947, 1950, 1955, the UFO flaps, all that stuff. It was little green men, right? It was in the zeitgeist. It was in people's heads. People were really charged up about UFOs for whatever reason. Well, I guess because they were all over in the sky, right? Which we've talked about in the past with pop-out tulpas and this type of thing as well. Sort of fear manifesting as visual phenomena of plasmas or whatever else. But in this case, if we're looking at Lamb now, so let's say Lamb in the 1910 or whatever, we're looking at the aliens of Roswell, sort of that space, 1940, 1950, 1960, through the Cold War. I think the entity today, this actual villain with 1,000 faces, would be Skynet. It would be a super intelligent AI that is, on the horizon to destroy us, which, right? So what's next? What's the next one? AGI, now artificial superintelligence. I don't know, like how much more weird do we get than that? The singularity? I don't know. But anyway, so the villain in this context, much like Jung's concept of the shadow, is a projection of everything humanity tries to suppress. As Jung always said, something to the effect of what we try to suppress, what we reject becomes real out there, away from us, not within us, without us. And so we're all dealing with each other's rejections in that space, right? But anyway, so but it appears as demons in ancient times, witches in medieval Europe, to even go back further, or extraterrestrials in modern sci-fi, constantly mutating to fit the cultural context. While Campbell's hero transforms through wisdom and courage, this villain, this, again, amorphous Cthulhu-style proto-trickster villain, thrives in ambiguity and fear. And this is right back to that Nightmare Fuel Station. If you guys remember that show, that was pretty wild. But this reflects, of course, our darker tendencies and unresolved psychological tension, which is, well, at the core of what it means to be human, right? And so the questions for you guys tonight are as follows. Number one, do you think there is this force, not the force of Obi-Wan Kenobi that binds the galaxy together, not that force, a force within us that we manifest as a force without us, in the guise of this villain with 1,000 faces? Or are we just getting in our own way? You see what I mean? So those things we reject, those things we repress, those things that give us nightmares about ourselves and about what it means to be human in a larger society, are we actually manifesting these entities? And I came across another Reddit thread too. I'll try and pull it up in a second here, but I dropped it to James a day or two ago. I can't remember when. But there was a question. Somebody asked a question on Reddit, and there's a full-on demonology thread on Reddit, which is wild, of course, because people are trying to summon these things. It's a whole thing. I'm not going to get into that directly. But the question was in that Reddit thread, which I'll try and pull up, like I said, is that are all demons real? Have they always existed? Or are there new demons being created in some way? Right? Are there, let me get this right. It's something to that effect, right? I think that's exactly it. Let me read it. I got it right here. It's this. It's goodness gracious. Can there be new demons and crap? Or are they all old? Can there be new demons? And that is exactly at the core of this, because if you're talking about the hero with 1,000 faces, that's us. That's me. That's you. That's all of us. And so it's the hero with, 10 billion faces, or however many people are on Earth, and however many stories we can tell together. So there's the hero with a trillion faces, okay? It's the same archetypal journey of humanity. However, when you look at the opposite, if the inverse is true, is there no such thing as a new demon? And in this case, if you look back at that narrative with Lamb, Crowley, the conjuring of said entity, sort of how it kind of flowed into this UFO mania of gray aliens and abduction phenomena, then suddenly into, of course, like I said, this AI superintelligence and Skynet of the modern time, it seems like all these fears are built into us, even to the point where we want it. We need it. We have to have it. Do you think people would exist without fear? Do you think it's like hard coded into us as part of this larger narrative? And the narrative foil is what I'm calling this tonight for that exact reason, that we cannot within ourselves imagine, trace with our own feet, and walk into a space that is entirely positive for ourselves. Can we or can we not? And if we could, would this proto-trickster arrive to ruin it, or would we summon it ourselves? And that's kind of what's on my mind tonight. A lot of ways to consider this. It could be Darth Vader, right? It could be, you pick him. It could be Satan. It could be any of them, any of these demons. And so we have talked about the sort of the new demon before in terms of something like Slender Man, okay? Which is possibly, again, we don't know because all the disclaimers apply, as I said. This is above my pay grade, clearly. But if all the demons of old, and I found this fantastic Demonolator book, is what it was called, Modern Dating. What's up, Jacob? And they've got all these ways to summon the demons of old, from Goetia demons, from the Lesser Key of Solomon, like just so many different entities, like full-on entities with different names and different aspects and their sigils and, how to control them and all the rest of this stuff. But of course, the question really comes down to something like Slender Man is not an ancient demon, okay? It did cause those two little girls to stab their friend because it got into their head. It got into their mind. And so the question is, are the demons of old sort of morphing into the demons of new in some capacity? All they need for us to do is give them a name, give them a face, give them energy and attention, as we've talked about in the past. And so again, are we stuck, hardwired into the capacity of creating the villain with 1,000 faces, regardless? I don't know. I've been learning this in my own good time here because I'm, a little bit of gray hair. Long of tooth, as they say. I'm not that old yet, but you get the idea that you recognize many times you just get in your own damn way. And sometimes you just need to get the hell out of your own damn way, right? And just move on, carry on down the path, stay true to the process, be the best you that you can be. And suddenly, maybe, just maybe, these entities that we create need not apply. You think it's as simple as that? Back to what Joseph said, which was very poignant. Thank you for that call. The day before yesterday, he was talking about return to sender. Remember that? The handshake. Look, I don't need negative energy. And so with some sort of psychic shield in that capacity, you send it back. Do we need a foil? Do we need a villain with 1,000 faces to match the hero within us? I don't know about that. I don't think so. Personally, I'm learning more and more about myself. I'm learning more and more about the world. But I do think that it is hardwired into us to create these things. What's next after Slender Man? Does that still exist? Is it still a growing story, a growing narrative on the interwebs? Is there going to be a new version that AI brings to us? I don't know. There's a lot to this, and that's where my mind's at tonight. Like I said, if you guys have been following the podcast feed, thank you for that. It's been a real joy putting those things together because it's narrative building. And in this case, we're talking about the opposite, a narrative foil. And is it necessary? If you have a protagonist, is it possible to write a decent story without an antagonist? That's what I want to know, because it almost feels like the answer is nah. They all want to shout, Jerry, as, you are not the father, right? This type of stuff. We want drama. We want strife. We want anger. We want emotion. We want human madness. Is it possible to put it away for good? I don't know. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. Be right back. More on the way.
In shadows he's watching, waiting. A spirit of mischief moves. Between worlds he's weaving. A game no one can lose. The air hums with his whispers. Time's ticking for the clever. He's the twister of time, and he's calling out your name. Changing forms with the night. Never again will you be the same. A flicker of light, then gone. He dances through echoes lie in the corners of your mind. Keeps you wondering why. Of your own making, unlocks secrets worth forsaking. He's the twister of time, and he's calling out your name. Changing forms with the night. Never again will you be the same. With a wink he disappears, leaving only questions behind. Yet he's always near, just waiting for the right sign. He's the twister of time, and he's calling out your name. Changing forms with the night. Never again will you be the same. So keep your wits about you in this realm of dreams and schemes. He's watching and you know it's true in his maze of infinite themes. With each shadow, every echo's chime. The trickster awaits to change your time. Changing forms, he plays his game, and you'll never again be quite the same. He's the twister of time, and he's calling out your name. Changing forms with the night. Never again will you be the same. He's the twister of time, and he's calling out your name. Changing forms with the night.
Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, Twitter, Twitch, D-Live, Kick, and I think I got it. And broadcasting on the Troubled Minds Radio Network and 88.4 FM, Auckland, New Zealand. Tonight, we're talking to Narrative Foil, the villain with 1,000 faces. Now, of course, this is a new term. You know me, and I like to merge ideas. But could there truly be a force that bends reality, slipping through dimensions and taking on forms that match our deepest fears? A villain that transcends time and space, shifting from ancient myths to modern technology, all while existing just beyond the reach of understanding. Well, it seems to me like that exact notion is us. And as much as we want to say there are monsters under the bed, as much as we want to say there are aliens out there that are going to do these things to us, I kind of feel like, and I can see a realm and a world where all of that stuff is not real whatsoever. Okay? And I'm not telling you that, you know me, just a thought experiment is part of this, because if we're always chasing an antagonist in our mind, then assuredly we're going to find one. And who said it in the chat? Somebody said in the chat there very smartly on YouTube, is that without the end, with a protagonist without an antagonist is kind of boring, right? It's kind of boring. which everybody knows. To tell a compelling tale, you need flawed characters. You need the hero's journey a little bit. You need things that aren't so, old school vanilla light and darkness, because that gets boring and old too, because we always know right in the end the good guys are going to win. Look at Game of Thrones as an example of that. There's these always characters changing their minds about everything depending on the situation, and being mean to these people but nice to those people. It's flawed. It's the flawed aspect of humans is what makes us confoundingly frustrating. Two descriptors there. Just a handful, but also it's what makes us incredibly interesting, isn't it? and so that becomes the thing. Are we hardwired for drama? Are we hardwired to create an antagonist where one does not exist? Now, if you take this in, like I said, the more I was looking at this and thinking about these ideas, I was like, wait a minute now. Not only did sort of this fit into that Crowley Lamb narrative of, morphing into aliens in our minds, kind of seeping into the zeitgeist in the temporal space of the 1900s, into past World War II, the Cold War, all the rest, and then still existing today and changing into the AI systems of tomorrow that are going to, show up and eat us with their cat girls or whatever's coming next, right? It's going to be the next Trojan horse to take us out. Well, it got me thinking about the larger context of what it means in terms of people recognizing this. And let's say that most of the population out there, no offense, everybody's trying to pay the bills and the grocery prices suck and gas is terrible and rent's through the roof and, good luck buying a house and, all that stuff. I know there are massive real world challenges that I'm not immune to. I wish I was, I'm not. I try and put it out of my mind to have these shows and kind of share these ideas. But the point is that if you recognize this in some way, are you able to sort of put the antagonist to rest? And this villain with 1,000 faces maybe sort of leaves you alone? Anybody out there able to just literally just put it to bed and say, no thanks, not today, Satan? Anybody able to do that? I wonder. But I did notice when I was digging into this a little bit more when I got home after the thought, is that Jacques Vallée wrote about this in Passport to Magonia. And the term itself, Magonia, is a place, okay? But it is a place wherein this sort of proto-trickster spirit resides. It is something like the Fey realm. It is something like just beyond the veil. It is something like another dimension. It is sort of that idea that this thing appears to us, whatever this is. And again, it could be all in our mind. It could be all in our mind. Like I said, I always like to keep all the options open, including we're being screwed with from beyond. Okay. Some ancient proto trickster is here with us and just kind of messing things up all the time. But it sure seems like we like to repeat these cycles, right? We talk about these cycles a lot of humans kind of messing up, getting in our own way when it's unnecessary. And is it back to the hero with 1,000 faces? Is it that even if there is no strife, we need to create strife through boredom, through inaction, through, well, whatever comes next? I don't know. I'm not the type to get bored easily because there's tons of stuff to read into, tons of stuff to kind of chase down, tons of ideas, tons of just wild things. You know me, always talking about wild things. So I'm not one to get bored easily, but I know some people are. And does that mean you have to create the drama? Does that mean you have to create the antagonist? I don't know. So back to this. Let me read this. Again, 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. Love to hear your thoughts. Nobody on the line yet. That's my fault for a less than compelling argument so far. But anyway, so it brings us to the idea that the villain with 1,000 faces is more than just this narrative foil, as I'm describing. It is a force that shapes societies. Now we're getting somewhere, right? So Jung believed that if individuals fail to integrate their shadow selves, those repressed parts of the psyche would manifest outwardly in destructive ways into the world itself, both personally and collectively. The villain could be seen as the collective shadow of humanity. Now we're getting somewhere, right? The villain with 1,000 faces is Jung's idea of the collective shadow of humanity itself. An externalization of all our repressed fears, anxieties, and traumas, surfacing in forms that we truly can't comprehend, but instinctively dread. It brings us back to the idea of that nightmare fuel. It brings us back to the idea of conjuring these pop-out tolpoids through fear, which fear manifestation of not just a societal drama, but something in the larger context of, us creating this the villain with 1,000 faces. I don't know. There's a lot to this. And like I said, we can go deep into this, and we'll get to Jacques Vallée a little bit later as well. But that's the whole point, is he noticed this. He recognized this. One among many. He's not the only guy. I kind of sniffed it out. You sniffed it out. We've talked about this in the periphery, but not directly. Not directly in the sense that, are we conjuring and manifesting not just our own nightmares or our own worst fears, but actually actively creating an antagonist for ourselves, because without it, victory and success would be boring. Yeah. Pop-out tolpoid. Pop-out tolpoid is a tulpa, which is a thought form. And the manifestation of it would be a fear mechanism of the human mind and the human consciousness. That's what a pop-out tolpoid is. We did an entire show. It's TULPOID. It's another term that kind of fits with tulpa, the thought form. Yeah, that's what it is. Thanks for the question. Sometimes I get ahead of myself and around and forget that not everybody's been here for every single show. Thank you for that. Okay, so yeah, what do you think? Got a couple calls. Thank you for that. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show just like this. Thanks for being patient. What's up? What's up? We got Theo in Philly. You're on Troubled Minds. How are you, the official poet of Troubled Minds? What's on your mind tonight, my man?
Oh my God, am I on already?
Yeah. You want to wait?
Yeah. Can I wait like 25 seconds?
Sure. Well, go ahead and finish up that poem. But yeah, so tonight we're talking this narrative foil. And like I said, I recognized it in a lot of different ways, a lot of these narratives, and recognize that's exactly the point of this, is narrative foil. And I've always maintained, as part of the Troubled Minds concepts personally, is that you can take a good many data points, like let's say millions and millions of data points, and find some intriguing things and build a narrative. And regarding that, it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. It means it's a good story. Okay. It means it might be, even a decent theory without some other additional evidence and, whatnot and the rest. But that becomes the bizarre part about it, is that you have the strangeness of creating whatever you want, whenever you want. And like I've always said, this show is a lesson in narrative building because of the wild ideas. You notice you can stack a thing on, you can stack a thing on, you can Frankenstein it this way, you can walk out on the branch that way, you can get a call from this person, a call from that person. And suddenly, where even it started out as, maybe the monster under the bed, it morphs into nightmare fuel and this, narrative foil or something. And we do this all the time. And so it does become sort of in some cases, a disjointed narrative, but it's a narrative nonetheless. And I do wonder if without the foil itself, if we would or would be able to just allow it to win. I don't know. And I don't mean clearly the show, we're doing just fine. I mean, people as the aspect of our shadow selves and all the rest of this. I don't know. But we'll get to one of the more compelling parts tonight is that Magonia, which is the Fey realm, which is the beyond the veil, where these entities lie and where they're screwing with us, which is, well, yeah. Let's go back to Theo. Sorry, I muted you. You were clearing your throat there.
No, I think that's...
You good to go?
Yeah. Am I still here?
You're still here. I just muted you up because you were going just to keep that off the radio. But yeah, go right ahead. Welcome.
No, I would say that was like one of the most amazing people that I've ever heard stalling for time ever. So that was amazing.
Oh, thanks. I've had a lot of practice. Thank you. What's on your mind, my man? Go ahead.
No
need to kiss
if you
my butt.
want, I can read a poem right now. Just that stalling for time. That was just like top notch.
Well, thank you. No need to kiss my butt. Okay. And I know it's, appreciation for real, but so how about before the poem, how about your thought on this? Do you think that, this is what we're doing to ourselves all the time? That we are actually stalling, not just for Theo's poem, but stalling for the victory. Like, because if we were completely focused and completely locked into what we're doing, focused on where we were all the time, like the Stoic mindset, and put all of the negativity and fear and doubt out of our heads, that we would win very early in life and we would be bored. Does that sound right to you?
No, that doesn't sound right to me at all. I think that sounds like kind of quasi-right, something that we would all want to be true. But I don't think that's something that would be true for all of us whatsoever. When it comes down to it, like, we're all just kind of random people that are spat out of evolution, whether we be like, tall or short or just randomly in the middle. We're all not the same people, and yeah, I don't know. I don't think that we're the same.
Where I agree with you, where I disagree is I think that we are going through similar things. And so this is where we kind of get into the larger context of what it means to create a narrative foil for ourselves. And is it necessary? Because you're right. Everybody, look, as much as we want to talk about the equity and stuff that's going on in, the dreams of the political space. No, you're right. I mean, everybody's created not equally. It's not fair. Life is not fair. Some people are tall, some people are short, et cetera, so on. And that's just the way it is. And we have different problems as a result. But my argument has always been that more of the things that we have in common are, something we should focus on, because I think we could help each other a lot, regardless of what those other sort of extenuating circumstances are by, our genetics or whatnot. But anyway, yeah. So you don't think that it's as easy as we're getting in ourselves? It's a little more complex than that, which I completely agree with as well.
No, I mean, like, I would just ask, in general terms, I don't know. I think life is just intrinsically not fair, and not fair in a very weird way. I mean, how could life ever be possibly fair?
Well, it's been tried, and it usually ends up that.
Yeah, I know, but there's people I think that you, Mike Strange, you're a beautiful person, You're one of the best people who is just genuinely a very good human person.
Thank you.
And I just think that there's a lot of people who just aren't necessarily the same way, and it's not that you ever decide that you're just mean or an asshole. Nobody ever decides to be a dickhead. Sorry for saying that. I know that I'm not supposed to say that on this channel.
You're good. Okay.
But, some people are just innately born kind of mean. Some people are innately born in ways that are physically undesirable to other people, and that makes no sense. That's such a mean, unthing fair for people to be born as. It's just
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on.
I don't know.
It's a great thought. It's a great thought. And here's actually what Carl Jung would say about that. And he said something to this effect. I butcher all the quotes, but it's something to the effect of,
I don't know. Go ahead.
I am not what I've become. I am who I choose to become. It's something like that. So it's not, you're not the victim of your circumstances. There's agency there. And that agency, even if you were born a mean SOB like you're describing, it's probably a little bit of both nature and nurture. Maybe you had a mean family that treated you like a dog, or worse than a dog. They treat the dogs well, by the way. And
man, I have to disagree with you so much.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, not trying to get too controversial with this simple podcast, but do you think that there's a specific reason that people were born, at the bottom of a South African diamond mining pit? I don't know. It's one of those things where I think that there's no actual reason for people being born down there. It's one of those things that we kind of retroactively attempt to justify. And I don't think it's actually worth justifying. It's I love being me and I love you being you. But at the same point in time, there are people who are just born into extremely unfortunate circumstances, and we shouldn't try to really justify their existence. It's just that's a really shitty place to be born.
Very well said. Crap and ass play on the radio, please. Don't drop the S word.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll stop doing that.
I know. It's a habit. Okay, but I'm with you. I agree. It only goes so far, and I think that also plays into that. The power of attraction, manifesting reality, this type of thing. Because as you described, you have to have some agency over what you can do. There has to be some level of freedom, and not born into squalor and strife and death. And that there are places where that does happen. And I'm with you. That is a random happenstance. And I do not believe those people did something terrible in a previous life and came back to die to that in a horrific way. That's not the way I see this. But yeah, I think you're right though. And so we can agree and disagree in different parts. But I think agency is paramount as part of that decision-making process. But also sometimes the way the cards are drawn are just against you. And before you even had a chance, you never had a chance. Yeah, we definitely agree on that. What else you got? Go ahead.
Oh, no, sounds good. Just, do you want like a really poorly written poem? Because I can read you one of those. Of
course. What would a Theo call be without a great poem? Stop. By the way,
so this
hold on.
Is like,
Okay, hold on. By the way, regarding that, hold on. And this is part of the thing. Somebody taught me this a long time ago on the show. Whoever's out there, shout out. I love you. Teaching each other lessons all the time. Let me teach you a lesson, young man, without preaching to you. A lesson I learned personally is that you do not speak ill of yourself. I think Jen on the line said this as well, because your body doesn't know the difference. But also, by the way, if you speak ill of yourself, you're putting a roadblock. You're not allowing yourself to become who you could be by saying, and I know it's flippant. It's sort of, a bad poem or whatever you said. Hey, come on, let it be. You're poisoning the well before we've even heard it. And don't do that to yourself, please. I'm sure it's going to be magnificent. And what you got? Go right ahead.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you, Jen, whoever said that to you. All right. Hard to know how long you have been asleep. When you wake from the centering summer's languid creep, the fog, the shadows, the nightmarish winter, observed by us via the autumnal quarter splinter, equal days and orthogonal nights, the equinox requires unorthodox frights. Days get shorter, and night encroaches, as spirits emerge like unseen cockroaches. In for a penny, and in for a pound. Don't be surprised when the bomb sirens sound. This is, after all, the 1st of October. Try not to be surprised if this month gets spookier once it is over.
Very well done. Very well done. How do you say that?
Sorry, that was like a very bad poem,
No, you're good. You're good. You know what? That's something a bard of old would have written. That was fantastic. It's good.
Oh God.
No, I'm serious. Get yourself one of those lutes and kind of you had that nice wraparound rhyme. I love that. I think it's great. This is the point. And more impressive, by the way, that Theo does this really on the fly. Notice he kind of ties it into the theme of the show. And by the way, an hour ago, I didn't even know what the theme of the show was myself, or hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago, whatever. So it is an impressive collaborative effort, and I appreciate it very much when you try and word weave into the nonsensical things I say on a nightly basis, and I appreciate it very much. Thanks for the call, unless you got anything else.
Well, regardless, I just love what you do and love what everyone else on the show does. So yeah, that's it.
Right on. Appreciate the call. You are the best. Do we have a blog to follow you at yet? Any of the rest of that? You got links for me? Anything like that?
No, I try not to do any of that stuff. So yeah, I don't do any of that stuff. But yeah.
Okay. When you get a compilation of your poetry and release it as a book, I demand to know immediately.
Fair enough, but everything is almost thrown away as soon as it is done. But yeah. All right.
All right. Appreciate the call. You're the best. Don't throw things away. Write them down. Put them in a book. Thanks for the call.
Toodles.
Yeah, take care. That's Theo in Philly, the official poet of Troubled Minds. Great stuff. Like I said, poetry's hard if you've never written it yourself. And like I said, I do love that wraparound rhyme. It kind of gives it that musical cadence a little bit. Yeah, exactly. Matt Sell, dude, write a book. I agree. Well, that's the point, right? So he's kind of doing one-offs and throwing them into the ether and then, not really revisiting. But I think he's leaving a lot on the table. Maybe there is a synchromistic aspect, a pattern within his poetry that will eventually, let's say 10 years down the line, present it to himself that he's getting in his own way with the narrative foil. You know what I'm saying? By just throwing them out like they're garbage, treating his own creativity like it's trash. Weird how some of these things manifest, right? Yeah, talented guy, great Theo. Like I said, give me a social media something so we can share and people can follow you and check out your poetry. But yeah, amazing stuff. But we're talking tonight this a narrative foil. The old speaking ill of yourself, right? Somebody said that a ways back too. So Jen also said it. Somebody said it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, a long time ago. Somebody in the chat or somebody sent me a message and said, dude, stop saying bad things about yourself because it sticks, whether it's flippant or whether you're just joking, it doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters because you are demeaning yourself when you shouldn't. And it is a way of holding yourself back, whether you know it or not. And it's I can't remember who said that. It was a long time ago, years ago. And like I said, Jen echoed that sentiment recently as well. But it is a thing. And I think this is a perfect example of us getting in our own way. And that right there kind of culminated in real time as exactly that. So, hey, there's a lot of people out there that would flippantly say something negative about you for whatever reason, okay? Whatever that's going to be. Don't give it oxygen. You don't need to. And you don't need to be negative about yourself because there's a lot of people out there willing to do it for free. Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you that's a fact. Anyway, so that's what we're talking about tonight, this narrative foil. The villain with 1,000 faces, of course, mirroring the Joseph Campbell aspect of the hero's journey. Well, what if instead we are constantly and continually creating these villains because we cannot accept peace and harmony in the human sphere? Does that make sense? I don't know. I don't know if it does or not, but it did seem poignant in terms of that Crowley effect. Like I said, Crowley, Lamb, UFOs, the scary alien abduction thing that kind of went through the 80s. And then what do we got now? Skynet. Like I said, there's a lot of ways to look at this and how this kind of, just does its thing over time. And we start to, fear different things in the zeitgeist, psychologically together, collectively. And it feels like we're creating these things. And as usual, the control mechanism aspect, the mass media is doing its part. And what are we afraid of now? What's the new boogeyman tonight? What's the boogeyman tonight? And you could probably frame it that way. Like go back and do certain periods, short or long, and the boogeyman tonight is World War III. Am I right? It's on the horizon. It's coming. Every time somebody's firing missiles at each other, all the fearmongers are like World War III, not recognizing, by the way, there's always missiles firing at each other. I'm just saying, not to downplay it. I think it's horrific no matter what, but you get my point. Is that tonight's foil is the end of the world again. But anyway, the idea is, are we continually getting in our own way? And is it built into us? Is it hardwired? And is this something we cannot stop? Because I don't think that's the case. Theo, great stuff. He's completely right in my opinion that sometimes you draw the bad hand. Sometimes you're born into a circumstance where you don't have a chance. And that's a wrap. And it's unfortunate, horrific, and all the rest of that. But imagine when we put that behind us. And we can all see the narrative foil in front of us and do something about it. What do you think? 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. It's as easy as that. We got Jen in Missouri coming up. We got James in Michigan and your calls as well. Don't go anywhere. More Troubled Minds on the way. Thanks again to Theo for jumping in here. Be right back. More on the way. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, Twitter, Twitch, D-Live, Kick. We're broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. And, of course, 88.4 FM Auckland, New Zealand. Tonight we're talking, I'm calling it a narrative foil, the villain with 1,000 faces. Of course, mirroring the idea of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Now, of course, us people, you, me, we're the heroes, okay? But there has to be an antagonist, right? But what if there's not? Is it boring? Are we hardwired to be averse to the idea of a boring, we're born, we win, right? I don't know. Like I said, clearly there's going to be some rubber meets the road type stuff, like Theo was saying very smartly, and I agree that sometimes the cards aren't there, and you're not born into that space, whatever that means. But I think it's our job personally to do our best to overcome whatever that is, and not to flippantly say that, as I always say, because unfortunately somebody dies very young of cancer, like a 5-year-old or something, which happens. It does happen. It's not incredibly common, but it is a thing, and it's brutal to see that level of just bad luck happen. It happens. I mean, you can't manifest your way out of that. So of course there are exceptions to this, but the question tonight is: are we hardwired to build an antagonist into our hero's journey? Because it sure as hell seems like it to me. Or let's get metaphysical and weird. Is it something out there, that proto-trickster spirit that we're always talking about, which Jacques Vallée talked about in Passport to Magonia, which we will get to in a little bit more depth as we go. But love to hear your thoughts. Where does this sit with you? And does it make some sense when we're generating a new antagonist with a new face to stop the situation where we're just about to win, just about to turn a corner, just about to learn something new about ourselves, learn something new about the world and the situation? Are we stopping us intentionally? And is it built into the human species, human mode, human go mode, also human stop mode? 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. Hang tight, James. Jen beat you by a bit. Thanks for being patient, Jen. Jen in Missouri, you're on Troubled Minds. How are you? Go right ahead.
Hi, good to hear from you. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm doing well tonight. Glad to hear from you as well. What is on your mind? What is with this stuff? Am I onto something or nah? You know me and my nah.
No, this definitely, it catches my attention. I think that when it comes to the protagonist, I've always been fascinated with us, and I've done just a lot of thinking on it. In the end of ends, if you think about the human conscience, just any human being, and they have different layers of conscience about their moral compass and how they feel about it. And if you go back, if you think about humanity as a species and go back to the farthest reaches of it, and the first time that that species began to recognize some sort of moral code, if that's the case. I don't know what to compare it to, but I've heard it referenced in different documents and stories and things like that, that there's a moment of realization that you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, or that you've done something that has harmed someone else. In the case of Cain, which is considered to be the first murderer. In that case, the realization too that life was not eternal, that could stop. So you have this entrance of another type of consciousness, another type of understanding of what the human spirit, the human body, that's capable of infecting the rest of humanity with something evil that it will greatly regret over and over again. Or, in the conscience, depending on the conscience, one may feel that they are right in committing such a crime or doing such a thing. And then others feel, it just depends. But introducing the concept that one can do wrong And they can be so wrong that I think it trickles down genetically. And I think it trickles down genetically through the entirety of humankind. The possibility or the inclinations of doing things that greatly impact the entire reality of existence for humanity. And that type of, when something is done like that, when an act is done, that can't be undone. It could create a type of thought form, a sort of tulpa, as you were talking about, that goes on indefinitely because it continues to be fed by the nature of the realization that you're not an animal, though you still have inclinations to do things purely off some type of just a whim, like any other, like an animal, but the consciousness to have a moral compass about what you're doing. And so, stuck in that sort of status, I think humanity has faced off with itself for a long time. And that there is a type of, if you want to think about it this way, a sort of thought form that could gather itself and begin to become a type of body that people could see as being an entity that may be referenced to as the devil, that continues to have a sort of chaos and impact on the human species in particular, and on the conscience and the mindset of humanity, due to this understanding of their imperfection, at least on the side of those receiving it, and those that are actually doing these deeds, that do the deeds of evil, as we truly should understand. I mean, and that's all perception, but some people say, what do you think evil really is? And it'd be basically the massacre of innocence, the just brutality for no cause, extreme cases of evil. We're not talking about everyday, small, minor. That's not what's going on in the world. What's in the world of mankind that's been going on forever has been that there are these instances that are unexplainably horrific. And everyone is shielded from that due to the way we've developed society with the laws and with the beliefs and with the founding of how humans should interact with each other. Should that deviate ever so much, it could offer up that there's more of a freeway, but that doesn't mean that there's a evil becomes more intelligent over time, just the same way that good does as well, if you're talking about the mirroring aspect, I think. And so there's this progression, and if it is a tulpoid type of concept where it's a thought form manifesting, the idea of angels and demons and generational curses that they travel through bloodlines. You take someone that is predisposed and has committed incredible evil and has caused a great deal of pain and suffering unnecessarily to their fellow man. And then there are offspring from that source. There's just two outcomes. Either you learn from pain and it affects you in such a way that you know what real love is, what real kindness and gentleness is, or you learn how to be just as evil, if not more evil, because of the cruelty from that. And that is something that's occurring, I think, as a species in mankind, that is something developing. and it's going one way or the other, depending on, and it's not up to those that are born into evil circumstances that are not in their control. They can't do anything about that per se. But in the end, there's something about the way that they interpret it. And some individuals, some of our greatest heroes, some of our greatest hearts have come out of circumstances that are horrific. And we've had our greatest villains come out from those situations as well. So I think there's something to do with that, but I think it's a topoid, that it's a long-term DNA, generational access, and natural inclination. For some, depending on their circumstances and depending on their brain and everything else, on how they interact with the world around them. But I think that there's something like that going on. I think that if you want to make it spiritual, you could call it the devil. That the worst nightmares of humanity come out of humanity, that it's imagined in a human mind that remembers typically through its nature or nurture type of concept. And there are people who come out of nature and nurture, and they come out against the evil that they experience. And there are those who come out of that same circumstance, and they surpass what they came from in evil, or they surpass what someone could come out of good. There are quotes that, soft times or hard times, what it creates, and that can all be misinterpreted really easily. I mean, none of this can be put into practice. It's something I think that is very natural. If you go back to the original horrific acts of mankind, is where you find the source of evil and then the recognition of it, where they began to say, or they began to believe, that this was so unbelievable. Because if you've ever heard or seen something so horrific that a person has done, that it is truly beyond the depths of the worst nightmare you can imagine, out of that comes either something so brilliantly kind or loving or sympathetic or understanding, or whatever the case with what humanity is capable of, is what grows that topoid. And the opposite of that is that it's what grows that same and even thicker and more horrific. So it just depends, I think, on something entirely different that must be coming from a separate source. That, I don't know. There's something about that. And
it feels like
quote about not to speak badly about yourself reminds me of Bruce Lee. But anyway.
Yeah, just real quick on that. So regarding, it's basically generational trauma, except not sort of in the family sense. We're talking the human family. We're talking this dark cloud over all of us all the time. And what comes to my mind is the idea of the olive branch, even bad blood and family feuds and all the rest of this stuff, right? The symbolic olive branch is, okay, can we turn the page and just put this behind us and go forward? And it seems like pre-built into us is that remembering of the horrific things that came before, and we just can't let it go. And I don't know, it's all of this is incredibly complicated, and that's why we talk about these things, because I don't know that answer, but it feels like there is sort of this generational curse on humanity itself of, another instance, let's say that you're in a down spot and you're in a dour mood, and somebody says, well, let me help you. And you say, well, okay, but no, get away from me. I'm in a bad mood. And there was sort of your olive branch that you rejected, just again, philosophically. And this applies to everybody. I'm not talking about you or anybody else specifically. It's we tend to sort of lash out or even turn people off by other things, other ideas. It's I don't know, like to me, this is one of those things where a lot of times the answer is in front of us and we can't take it. Like it's just like, here you go. No, thank you. I'd rather trip and, cut my chin tomorrow because I didn't have what I needed to do what I needed to do. I don't know. It just, it seems like this is built into us in some way, and I don't like it. And like, I'm getting old. Like I said, I don't like that, but I also don't like the fact that it took me this long to figure a lot of this stuff out personally. And, well, here we are. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. What else you got?
No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I don't think that there's something interesting about it. There's something called the McDonald triad. And it's the concept that there are these specific traits that show up really young. And this is not, these theories, these are applied to society without society really realizing it. But there are these certain keystone notes. And it's interesting that there's a certain reaction in the brain of a developing mind and the way that they encounter their experiences and then what they do with it. And we're not talking about, if we're talking about this, we're not talking about minor deviancy. It's something more severe than that would qualify as evil. We should be really cautious, I think, to pick apart that evil is just a bad choice. Sometimes that is the case. But there are those who actually intentionally seek out to find the weakness in those that would wish to do good, and they see it as a sort of weakness and an opportunity to do evil. And ironically, that is at work. How common is it? It's about perspective. So in general, we all look at each other and we understand that we are all the same and we mean well. And there are those who believe that they mean well and it works for them, but they do evil deeds. And I think it's just something that there's no escape from it, because those who hear a moral message or attempt to do good do. But in fact, it's just, how do you extract that? I think it's so deeply rooted as doing the right thing and being guided by something that people would consider to be a topoid or a god or a devil, that is at work in the world, that we've delineated the two because it is so clear when you see it or when you come across it. And I think that people began to become very conscientious about even the slightest thing, that it could be a symptom of the other creeping in, or they could be a symptom that secretly, and that's what I think a lot of the infringement of rights and much of that comes from. When people began to believe that people couldn't be trusted with themselves and their ability to act and what they might do. But I do think it's some type of ingrained part of the species, just that I don't know. It's a strange, because it's a very intelligent creature, because humanity is so intelligent, it becomes more drastic how they respond to certain events. And it seems to be for survival, and it continues to look that way. But in that case, it begins to survive upon itself. Pure evil begins to protect itself. And that's a type of topoid thought form as we're thinking of it in an occultic idea. And then that it can travel through genetic pathways. And that there's a mental world is a whole nother layer, I think. And we're never going to get rid of it. And that's that.
It feels that way. As you're talking there, I think that we've talked about the 7 deadly sins recently. It feels like an 8th deadly sin, like a generational humanity collective deadly sin that is stuck. We're stuck. I don't know. And this is why, by the way, when
when we're thinking about these extremities, I think it's important to consider it. Because I just want to, leave it out. But I do think that. Well, so you think of it as a generational. I mean, that's kind of what I don't know. It's people who come out of extremely, say generationally. You look at a father that is generationally committed just a lifetime of crime and harm. And I don't mean petty crime, but I mean like traffic tickets. I mean like something extreme. And then you have a mother as well that does that. And you have offspring from that. And then they are afflicted by them. And then, say out of those offspring, some of them pick up where it was left off. And then another goes the complete opposite direction. And because of their suffering and their experience, they know more deeply somehow what couldn't be known from a good family, for example. So say like a family where both parents are very loving and kind and they treat them well. There's these different extremes to both sides that create the creature. And in some cases, the creature goes one direction, and in some cases, they go another, depending on their experience. And it's almost impossible to predict, except for their action. But the actual manifestation is, what we consider to be evil. The evil only manifests through people, otherwise we wouldn't know what it was. So to talk about inanimate evil it's not helpful because it doesn't matter unless people are manifesting it. The same way with a virus or anything else.
Well said.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mike. I was sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We got the phone line's a little bit weird, as you know. It's okay. It's totally good. I like I said, this is a weird one to me because it does resonate. It feels like these are lessons we should be talking about when we're young. We should have been talking about this stuff collectively, 20, 30, 40 years ago, whatever. Because back to, sort of the education system and sort of these generational trauma and curses and all the rest, it feels like this is one of the biggest ones that we just kind of don't ever overcome. We're still, again, as we're speaking right now, they're firing missiles at each other somewhere in the world. And that's almost always, it's just grotesque. And yeah, fantastic stuff as always.
Yeah.
We've got about a minute left. If you got anything else.
I mean, just it's always a joy to speak with you. But the concept, though, of people are waiting for this World War III, and they don't realize that they have been. I mean, the war that was created in World War II that resulted in the massacre of literally millions and millions of people for a cause beyond their even their own desire, I think would be a good way to put it, besides the propaganda of their nationalism and just the obligation to fight in the war. But this war, I think the World War III that we are thinking of is actually going to result, it's more on the level that it's already on, that we should consider that the new war is just about the way that humanity understands itself. And if it can come to some kind of understanding about, and I mean, defiance in itself and anarchy. I don't know. I just don't know.
Fire.
If it's the best thing.
Agreed, 100%.
Have a good night, Mike.
Appreciate the call. You're welcome to stay.
Enjoy visiting with you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Appreciate the call.
No, it's okay. I mean, thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too. Jen in Missouri, the Arcane Observer. I'll tell you all about it when we get back. More Troubled Minds coming up. We got James in Michigan on your calls as well. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, Twitter, Twitch, D-Live, Kick, and the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. And, of course, 88.4 off Auckland, New Zealand. Can I say it properly? Tonight we're talking a narrative foil, I'm calling this. Could there truly be a force that bends reality, slipping through dimensions and taking on forms that match our deepest fears? That's the archetypal trickster spirit. A villain that transcends time and space, shifting from ancient myths to modern technology, all while existing just beyond the reach of understanding. Or is this something we create and manifest ourselves, regardless, because we need it? We have to have the doom. We've talked about doom scrolling in the past, the fear-mongering, all the things that we are just drawn to like moths to the flame. Why? Why is this a thing? And in this case, the great Joseph Campbell in 1949 wrote The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And he looked at all the folklore mythology, all these amazing stories of old, and said, hey, look, there's a theme here. And he wrote a whole thing about it and said, this is the human experience, except the thing we're missing ourselves, and this is me paraphrasing poorly, is that we're going through this. We're all going through this in some capacity, period. And, well, why? And it seems like almost as if this is built into our DNA as deeply as anything else. And that's the point. And so I flipped it. Of course, you know me, flipping ideas. Let's kick the turtle over, see what's underneath, just for the lulz. And I was thinking about it, and a narrative foil. Without a foil in a narrative, without the antagonist, it's boring, right? And they all lived happily ever after. And so as a result, we're manifesting drama and trauma. And is there a way to shake this from humanity itself? Great call from Jen. The Arcane Observer, go check out her show. Links in the description down below. troubledminds.org/friends. It says follow Jen here. Please do that. Check out her YouTube channel. And she's here on the network with us as well. And great stuff. Look, I don't know. I don't have answers here. I'm not the answers guy. But I think it's fascinating to talk about this stuff and see what people think about these ideas, because there's no such thing as a villain with 1,000 faces until we've just manifested it together and put a name to something. So what do you think? 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubleminds.org. Thanks for being patient, my man. James in Michigan, Salcedo Paranormal. What's going on? How are you?
Oh, I'm here. Great calls from everyone. Sorry I can't really talk in chat tonight. It's the timing of this is sort of ironic in a way, because I'm dealing with another rough patch with my eyes and everything in my head. So, and this just has me thinking about, so these are just, I guess I'll just go to my points here, because I'm not going to be able to stay the whole night, but, as far as talk with you all night, but, I do think there is something that people, or as a species, has made for itself, these thought forms, these ideas, thought forms and these ideas that have stuck around for a long time, changing here and there, but still there. But I think it's more of a case of and than it is of or. In other words, I do think that we collectively and or individually can get in our own way, but I think that there is other beings out there, other forces that are there sometimes in some cases, and all the time in other cases, I don't know, that try to influence us in all the directions, in the good and the bad, the neutral. Plenty of reports of people having experiences where it seems like they have constant contact with maybe this one or this handful of ghosts or aliens or spirits or whatever, and they seem to be not really good, not really bad, not even really neutral. They sort of, people have encounters with the same being over and over again, and it's different every time. Sometimes it's good to them, other times it's not. And so, and who knows, again, I'm getting off track here, but yeah, I think it's really more of a case of and than it is of or.
Yeah, I agree. Again, as you know, there's a lot of ways to look at this, and this is why recognize when you get an idea out and you get a lot of people looking at it, talking about it, thinking about it, there are going to be different perspectives, different answers. And you know me, I'm not the arbiter of truth by any means, but that's exactly the point. And so here we are with this narrative foil. All of these things are constantly happening, and including we're getting in our own way, which is probably the big one for me that I've recognized in myself, is that you tend to sabotage yourself. You're just like, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not fast enough. I'm not whatever's necessary for the moment, right? You're just kind of demeaning yourself. And it's, I mean, I don't know. Like I haven't met somebody that's, glowing and floating yet. So, I mean, like I always say, which is kind of the demigod joke, right? Of somebody that can do all the things perfectly, it just doesn't exist. And so, I don't know. The message, of course, for tonight is in the end of ends, as I always say, is to have faith in yourself. And if you can't, hey, there's people out there that can help you with a hand up. And when you get it, don't issue it for some cruelty, for some generational trauma, for, a bad day, for whatever. If a hand is a hand, and that's that. But yeah, I think you're spot on as usual, James. There's a lot of ways to look at this and a lot of things happening all at the same time. And the complexity of the human mind, as Jen was saying as well, is we have to be able to parse all of that and figure out what the hell all this means. Yeah. Wild stuff. Regarding, go ahead if you got anything else, but I want to ask you about Jacques Vallée as we get into that.
Yeah. I'll just give sort of an example of, like, I don't know, from personal experience. And I think there's a fine line between, or can be a fine line between getting in our own way, and sort of recognizing our own abilities and where they're at. So I was born legally blind. I've been writing since I was a teenager, I would say. And for anyone that has bought my book recently, congratulations, you have a special first edition. Because not only is there one mistake in there are two. And I'm working on getting the one mistake fixed. To a friend that does all these things for me. They've had their own delays recently because of sickness in the house and weather. They're sort of in the part of the country that had to deal with all the hurricane madness there. They're okay, but it's delayed that process. But anyway, and I've been very annoyed by this, by realizing that the book did not turn out exactly the way I want. But I've had more than a few friends, as you know, Mike, that have said, well, that's okay. That's just makes it a special first edition. And I get that, but it still annoys me. And it's sort of an analogy of sort of where I'm at with my own eyes. Like, I understand that, things are going to happen because of my eyes. And I try to be okay with that. And sometimes I can, other times I can't. And I just try to do the best as I can with it, every moment. So, but yeah, I think there's I think there's lines, and there's blurring of the lines, and all those things can apply.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's very much a difference between an honest, earnest mistake and, literally being like, well, here it is, here's my shot, and then just dodging it because you're shy or whatever, right? Like that's what I mean. Like this is different, of course, but also, by the way, just to reiterate that if you purchased one of James's early books, there's going to be a correction made, and it will be the first edition with an error in the book or two, and there might be a third or a fourth, and it happens, man. By the way, it happens to everybody. It's happened to everybody. That's why they have a first edition, a second edition, a third edition. It's part of it. But the wild part, oh, and by the way, if you guys ever collected baseball cards anytime ever back in the 80s, remember the Billy Ripken with the, somebody wrote the F word face on the knob of his bat as a joke, and as they were taking like their picture. You guys remember this? Anybody collect baseball card, the Fleer baseball card? He's holding his bat up, and they made the joke on him, and they wrote that on the bottom of his bat. And so he's smiling and takes the picture, and then it goes on his baseball card. And it's, of course, right, the joke's on him, but then those baseball cards became worth a ton of money. I don't know if they are anymore, but they were like highly sought after, because then they corrected it with like a white patch, and then they corrected it with a black patch, and then they corrected it by trying to blend it in with the knob of the bat so you couldn't see it. Point being, James, you're in good company, man. We're all human and things happen. And by the way, if you bought James's book, you got a first edition with an error that there you go, might be incredibly sought after one of these days. But yeah, it's all good, brothers. There's a difference between one thing and the other thing. Regarding Jacques Vallée, So Derek brought this up to me a long time ago, and we've talked about this often, is the what is it, Passport to Magonia. Now, Jacques Vallée describes Magonia as the place where this proto-trickster lies. This, big P phenomena actually resides. The Fey realm or something like that is the best parallel I could think of. But it's a place where this entity is that's drawing this energy from us, or this negativity from us. And by the way, you just, again, did it to yourself a little bit, kind of down on a mistake or two. But we're human, James. Like that's nothing compared to people that continually sabotage themselves, and we're all out there. It's horrific. But what's your thought on this trickster entity residing somewhere nearby and maybe named Magonia or whatever the hell he called it?
Yeah, I read that book, and I still don't know how to process half of it or more. It was a little while ago. But yeah, he's also, I'd highly recommend any of his books, because there's so many great accounts of experiences people have had throughout time. And yeah, I think, I wouldn't be surprised if there's not just one, but there's several of these beings that that are not, I'm not just counting like, I'm not just saying like people, these beings that people have encountered. I'm saying in general, beings that tap into or connect with people's thoughts and minds and hearts and everything. I wouldn't be surprised if there's many of them, or at least there has been many of them over the years, that do try to influence them. And not to say that people don't do things on their own. That's not what I'm saying either. Because again, I think it's more of an and, not an or. So, but yeah, I think that's possible. And I think, when people have these experiences with the other, whatever it is, they tend to react in all different ways too, if you think about that. And for some it's really positive. Others it's not at all. Others it's a mix. And so it's amazing how all this stuff sort of mirrors itself in each other and in all the different ways there.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. And this is again, this is something we will of course revisit. But as you know, me and my wild ideas, I love taking these ideas and flipping them upside down and seeing what's underneath. But this is the whole point. It's the villains are in the way of what we want, and we seem to have an endless thirst for generating villains for ourselves. The villain with 1,000 faces, and not just personally, but in the societal sense as well, which is unfortunate, incredibly unfortunate. But yeah, great stuff. Don't trip too hard on the book, man. Like I said, it happens to the best of us. If you go back and listen to some of the Troubled Mind stuff and all the ums and ahs and stupid moments I've had, boy, I tell you what, I could go back and trim them all out and make it seem like I'm perfect. But why? My God, what an amazing amount of wasted time when I could be building something else and going forward. You know what I mean? So a lot of ways to look at the world, as you said. I'm going to agree with you, and it is not or, it is and there's an and. There's an and for you. What else you got, my man?
That's it, but I will stick around and talk to you if there's time throughout the rest of the show.
Ron, appreciate you very much. You know you love him. James Salcido, keep that blindfold on. I hope your eyes get better real quick here. Go give him a follow. Go buy his book, troubledminds.org/friends. It says follow James. Search it yourself. Salcido Paranormal is the name of his show. He is the paranormal expert of Troubled Minds and a dear friend, as I said. And by the way, let's try and put him on a leaderboard. You can buy his book. It's only $5 Kindle, $10 paperback. And quick, get the hot off the press, get the first edition with a couple layers in there before they get all fixed up. There you go. Some extra incentive. See, James? See? Hey, there's some, maybe you get some sales out of a couple layers. troubledminds.org/friends, or search it Salcido Paranormal, SALSIDO space Paranormal Experiences, and that's where you will find James's book. If you guys have purchased that, thank you for that. Don't forget to leave him a nice review on Amazon. I've done that. Many of you have done that. Thank you for that. Let's help each other. As I always say, we are collaborating. We're not competing. It's the human space of ideas, and let's do our best to help each other with that. You're the best, James. Appreciate the call.
Thank you.
Hang tight. We'll get back to you if you got some time. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. We're talking this a narrative foil, the villain with 1,000 faces. Does this make sense? As usual, I'm always a little, in my own way, with narratives, 'cause sometimes I make them too complicated. I think this one is not. But what do you think? You are the ultimate arbiter of that. Let's go to Joseph in the Bronx. What's up, my man? Great call last time, and welcome to Troubled Minds. How are you, sir? And go right ahead.
I'm all right, man. How you doing?
Pretty good. Just, doing what we do. Weird stuff by dark of night. Thanks for staying up late with us. What's on your mind? Go right ahead.
Well, what I was listening to was when you talking about entities and, people looking for the enemy with 1,000 faces, like the villain with 1,000 faces and stuff like that.
That's the one. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, what I've been like into and, studying that need for a villain with 1,000 faces, that kind of like coincides with what I was talking about, the military industrial complex. And there was this guy, he was talking about it, and it's like saying that the industrial complex has a need to create an enemy for itself and things of that nature. But more so, there's this thing called distribution, right? And so you know about digital real estate, right?
Gotta say it again. What real estate you said?
It's digital real estate.
Oh, yep, sure do. Yep.
Yeah, digital real estate. And it was very popular and stuff back in the days, but that's like basically the metaverse and, people just interacting digitally and everything like that, right? And a lot of people, even just the majority of their money is in that market. That's why a lot of people are like carrying around right now, because they thought everything was safe in the NFT market, in the digital currency market, and they thought they couldn't translate the deficit in the digital scale as much as they could cash or banking situations and things of that nature. But more so, money makes the world go round, and there's something that I think it's called arbitrary titles, which people in the royal families had and stuff like that before. It's a way. It's like it's a way that basically that money becomes unlimited or something like that, right?
Okay, do me a favor. Do me a favor. We can't hear you a lot, so can you speak up? You just when you moved, it sounded better. Get close to the mic there and speak loud and clear, please.
Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me better?
Way better. Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. So yeah, it's called. Hold on one moment. It's called something title, right? And it's basically like for like the royal families and stuff like that, where they lost. They had these titles back in World War II when the Nazis invaded Europe and Germany and stuff like that, and that's literally what happened and stuff like that. But needless to say, like about like there's like this project called Project Tesseract or whatever, right? And it's like the Project Black Pyramid, and a lot of the world's communication systems run through Antarctica and other places and things of that nature, right? And that's why there's a peace treaty from all nations with Antarctica. And so the steps that people have been making towards, like, if people might say like, hey, let's jam the signals for the people at United Nations and stuff like that, that was just them like demonstrating that they do know how to distribute certain signals from Antarctica and things of that nature, which is the most dangerous thing, which is the biggest law you could break and stuff like that. So that villain with 1,000 faces is that. So that's like the biggest no-no in the world, and a lot of people think just because people have an opinionated thing when it comes to politicians that they have the right to do those things, and they've been tricked and bamboozled and stuff like that. So digital real estate comes into play because everything is on the digital market. Literally, when they launched digital real estate, you could have a 2-bedroom apartment, and that's literally on the digital market. You could be renting an apartment, or you could own an apartment, literally, and you could take some pictures of it, upload it on Facebook or something, and somebody could literally upload it on the digital real estate market, and now your apartment is in a digital world, and people can trade off of owning it or not owning it. It's called intellectual property and stuff like that. So distribution, they kind of tied all of that into it as well. So that's like this war that's been going on for since like the 1940s, 50s, and 60s and stuff like that. Is now like coming to an end. It's like been a big Cold War and stuff like that between a lot of secret societies that infiltrated the Vatican. And people just think that it's just attacking central banking and things of that nature. But the biggest landowner without taxes, the richest people in the world, like come from the Vatican and stuff like that, because they own the most property without having to pay taxes and things of that nature. And like some of the richest families in Europe and stuff like that, and a lot of people like infiltrated that, and then like stole technology in the 1940s, and they've been running like black projects for a long time. Well, not all of the black projects are bad, but a lot of them come from inexperienced people with advanced technology, and then they dip into the spiritual realm with that, and then they don't know how to control the demons and stuff like that. And so then after you too far deep in, you get scared, and then it's like, we got the family secret, you know. But that villain with 1,000 faces, if you ever been walking down the street and you notice somebody with dark eyes or something like that, and and then you just get that voice in your head like, yeah, it's following you. This is the thing that's attached. You know, people get scared, and that's a true thing. That's a real thing. People see it and they know it. Sometimes they don't feel it though, because they got their senses turned off, and that's literally how the very fall of a civilization starts.
Yeah,
they got their feelings turned off and letting somebody else experience the pain around them.
Yeah, which is very demonic, right? The whole point is sort of as you described last time. By the way, that the handshake, the return to sender was very, very poignant in the conversation, and it fits tonight as well with sort of that psychic shield. Shout out to Magic in the Noise. She left a nice comment on the YouTube channel about that, about what you said as well, because it is. Sorry, wait, just real quick. So regarding that, if you're reflecting sort of that psychic shield of yourself, then you're not absorbing that negative energy, whatever it happens to be. But if you're sort of in a nebulous space of whatever, then this is very demonic in the sense of our own demons. This again, the villain with 1,000 faces, kind of hitting us. Go ahead, go ahead.
Look, here's the scam. You're not deflecting negative energy if you have like a psychic shield where you don't feel it. All you're literally doing is numbing your nervous system. But energy doesn't know any boundaries. It goes through concrete. You get what I'm saying? The body is literally a computer. So you're not, if you throw those shields on, it doesn't mean that you're not absorbing it. It just means that you're not conscious about where you're getting hit at. So it's kind of like a praying mantis. When praying mantis go to fuck the female, is getting fucked by the male.
Hey,
the male
bro, you're killing me.
I'm sorry for
killing me. You're killing me. Okay, please don't do it again. Please don't do it again.
The female is having intercourse with the male. The male is doing his thing from behind, but the whole time the male is getting his head ate. You see, that's how praying mantises have intercourse and recreate. The male is so excited that he's just getting some, that he doesn't even feel the pain of his head coming off, and that's how he procreates with the praying mantis. That's literally what's been going on for a long time, and they haven't been understanding that because the military-industrial complex is finding an enemy. So now it's like, well, I got my head ate off. I don't feel anything, and now you're just walking around insane.
Without that,
but you can't feel it because you just don't. You can't feel it because there's so many other people that got their heads ate. You see what I'm saying? But then now you're looking around, and people start to wake up. Your head grew back, and it's like, oh wow! Literally, the whole world is the entire United Nations understands what we've been doing, and they came to report, and they got people behind them that got a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like what's been going on. So the psychic shield. Energy travels, energy transfers. There's been basically you can't, if you have that shield on all the time, you can't feel when you don't have any precautions, any defense towards when it's going to come back to you. You get what I'm saying? That's called karma. It's called energy. What you give is what you receive. So if you putting out a whole bunch of that stuff, you know what I'm saying? You putting out a whole bunch of negative energy, and you just put the shit up because you don't want to feel it back.
Yeah, I see.
There's a whole lot of ways where you are feeling it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%.
And especially if you move in as a collective like that, then that's how that happens. Because you literally, it doesn't matter about the warmth you feel in your body. Literally, energy is energy.
Indeed. Yeah, you want to stick around? I can hold you after the break if you got more.
Yeah.
Okay, stay right there. We'll be right back with Joseph in the Bronx and more with Herschel and James and your calls as well. I'll be right back. More Troubled Minds coming up. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, Twitter, Twitch, D-Live, Kick, and all the rest of the things. Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting, and 88.4 FM, Auckland, New Zealand. I feel bad. I don't want to get Jack thrown in jail, so let's not curse anymore on the radio, please, because we are live on the air in Auckland, New Zealand. I don't know what that looks like, but sorry, Jack, if you're in jail and it's our fault, my apologies. Tonight we're talking a narrative foil. Now, a lot of ways to look at this, of course. Is this an entity? Is this generational trauma? Is this us getting in the way of ourselves? What does this look like? Look, I don't know. I don't really know. But I do know that there are, let's say, human manifestations of good and bad, to break it down to the most binary aspect of things. But then also there are shades of gray, as we talked about. As you know, we always say the best story has shades of gray. You look at Game of Thrones, right? Tyrion Lannister. Is he good? Is he bad? Somewhere in between. Redemption? No. Yes. Is it possible? I don't know. But of course, I'm calling it the villain with 1,000 faces because we're turning the idea of Joseph Campbell's hero with 1,000 faces on its head and wondering if we're actually doing this to ourselves and creating the actual foil for the lulz. Oh my God. Historically, for the lulz might be one of the worst things ever. I don't know. What is your thought? 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. Joseph, you're back. Thanks for being patient, my man. What else you got? Go right ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you said it the best. I mean, the hero with 1,000 faces also exists. But I think how since it's become like normal since it's become normal to use people's rage as a method of steering them in a direction while somebody meticulously uses it for whatever their purposes are and stuff like that. I think it's become like a superpower now. Like it's okay to talk about things that people normally wouldn't have been able to talk about, like maybe like, let's say 30 years ago or something like that, because of, I would say, greed. So there's vectors set up, right? And so these vectors focus on telecommunication systems. So they monitor certain things like emotional data within the digital currency, right? Imagine if everybody's money. And so they monitor those things and stuff like that, and they have access to these type of softwares and programs and things of like that nature that they distributed amongst civilians as well, right? So, you know, they'd like to hide behind the fact that they think that everybody doesn't have access to it. So I say that flip the script on them. Only a certain amount of people have those. And certain people have those, and everybody knows who everybody doesn't like. But that's neither here nor there. The villain with 1,000 faces thing is definitely something that needs to shine light on the fact of redemption, like you just spoke of. what I come into contact with is a lot of times people, we call it the seatbelt syndrome. When things are really hot, they put on the seatbelt and they change their attitude. You know, like I just like their fathers reprimanded them, right?
I love
But
that.
then they sneak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the seatbelt thing. That's what we call it. This is New York. That's what I call it that.
The oh crap handle is up there too, so you could you're like, oh, things are getting spicy.
Yeah, see, whole time. That's what they use. The younger crowd, they put up a shield, you know, psychically, so they can't feel it. So their perception is like, well, if I'm not feeling what I'm dishing out, I can always blame the person that is, or something like that. It's weird when they're the ones that, you know, project the energy. You know, every time they contact the vector, they're the ones projecting the energy. Every time they turn on that switch and they're contacting the vector to interact, however they're interacting through the digital real estate, they're the ones projecting the energy. So they can't feel it when it comes to bite them. And so that's why there's been so many like wars that's been taking place since the 1940s and stuff like that. That I'm learning about. I'm watching this interview on. His name Danny Lucas or something like that. And this guy, he's really explaining literally what's the war that we're getting ready to end. And it's because a lot of information is available to everybody. So the fact that these people say that they don't think they could be charged for using this technology, though, is like a big ha 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 to them, because they like to flaunt the fact that they think that everybody doesn't have access to it. So I mean, that leaves them right there high and dry. You know, like always. So a lot of it's called distribution. The vectors come out. That's what Nipsey Hussle was doing too. Nipsey Hussle was a artist out of California.
They took him out.
He was killed. Yeah, they said that it was because he was doing a documentary on Dr. Sabi. That's not true. It's really because he had a lot of influence, and he started a business called Vector 90. He was setting up he was linking up with his people because he was Eritrean. So Eritrea is around Ethiopia and things of that nature, and he was using his links and stuff like that to, you know, talk to some people. And his country was going through war, and he used that to spot the politics. But the Nation of Islam basically sold him out on that, and they didn't stand up for him when they needed to, as people that supposed to have a black man's back anyway. He was setting up his own vector called Vector 90, and the vector system the business that he like created and stuff is still kind of like up and running or whatever. So you probably should support that. But the vector system is kind of it's flawed basically, because it's a lot of input. Like the same way that you ever been on the phone and you've been talking about, man, I gotta get those. I like that new guitar string or whatever the case is, and you see automatically an ad that comes up for guitar strings. It's built up off of that data. You know?
Yeah, that's all real.
So it pretty much knows.
They just admitted recently.
So it pretty much knows
that's real. Like yeah. So I don't know if you saw this, like probably 3 weeks ago, there was some contractor with Facebook that just admitted that stuff is exactly real, meaning that if you say something and you're like, they know, right? It's not some algorithm. They're actually listening to you on your phone when you're, talking.
I mean, so
it's crazy.
Pretty much you could determine if you didn't speak about it, then it wouldn't have come up on your digital real estate market. You see?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
If you never spoke about that, then you see what I'm saying? It's like they don't think that they could get in trouble for using this technology and having people in urban communities wear it for them. And while they're scamming and making money and doing all of these things, and they don't think that they can get in trouble for that. Well, if the people aren't speaking about it, and if you aren't speaking about it, it doesn't show up. Because one of the things that I know in the United Nations, in the Antarctic Peace Treaty, all of the nations that are a part of the agreement have their own specific marker on all of the situations that they are a part of when it comes to using the technology. when you speak about Project Bluebeam and all of that stuff. So all of those countries have that. So basically, wherever you have to go to the highest and the highest of the orders and stuff like that to get that info, and that info is already there and stuff like that. So once they figure out that they're being judged, that's called judgment. You see what I'm saying? It's like an Akashic record. They're being judged and stuff like that. So the technology was made to catch these people doing what they've been doing behind the scenes, and they just thought that it was going to run rampant and go out of control, and they were going to legalize drugs all over the world and everything. Everybody was just going to be pedophilia free, and it was going to be all right. But they didn't count on, you know what I'm saying? Like they really thought that. That's really true.
Yeah, like the
they thought it was going to be like that. But now you got people,
and then they rounded.
Now you got people. Now you got the, huh?
Then they rounded up Diddy. It's terrible.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
No, but Diddy is what Epstein should have been. Diddy is not even an Epstein type of person. Literally, he just is known for throwing parties. So if I throw a party right now, is it my fault that everybody brings drugs and has a lot of sex? No. It's just a running joke. It's just a running joke. That's what they try to do with him.
I see.
He literally has a lot of info on a lot of people that have been using the celebrity aspect of things to infiltrate certain things and manipulate government and things, it's federal government and stuff like that. And it's just now that we're seeing that the federal government is getting its power back.
Yeah.
Because of all of how these foreign governments mobilize the technology to put the people against America. Yeah. And other people in different countries could say the same thing for their current situation, you see?
Yeah, for sure.
So
for sure.
He's not really that type of person, but it's just like a stalling out of, okay, well, they usually would just pick up one person and then make them take the psychological rap for everything. But literally, that's why all of these sealed indictments are happening all over the country. In Britain, in 2018, they started the biggest human trafficking court case, and it's still going on, and it's under the Modern Slavery Act. All of this is happening global. It's just
everywhere.
A lot of the people that are just secluded to their areas. Have you ever heard about Agenda 21?
Agenda 21, no. But we got calls, man. We got to cut. So let me ask you a final question. You were amazing. I'd love to have you on all night. You let me know when you got a night. We'll just do a whole show, you and I together. Does Diddy end up dead in the next 6 months or no?
No, he ends up more alive than he ever could have been. He's more of an asset to the American government than any celebrity you could probably bet on. He's an asset, not a liability. So he's not a person that was. You got to remember, he's a black man in Hollywood, and so he doesn't have all the power that will be liable for him to be killed. He's still a black man in America and in the world. So he doesn't have all of that power. The power is the people that was above utilizing his fame to do all of these things. And they just want to, as soon as you mention sex parties, people get filled with shame and guilt, and they just do whatever. But he's not a white man that can buy private jets and fill it up with politicians and things of that nature. So that has to be understood as well. I mean, that's true. I mean, you got to recognize the world we live in.
That's why I'm laughing.
They wouldn't give a black man that much power.
That's why I'm laughing.
I'm just saying, he's an asset. He's an asset.
Okay, all right. Put that down as a prediction. I'm not so sure myself, but we can always agree to disagree. Fire stuff, brother.
And also, they're coming from our mayor Eric Adams.
I saw that. Undeserved,
by
the way.
New York got a whole bunch of RICOs and indictments going on. And stuff. Trying to get the mayor.
You can't.
Also, he's clean. They just trying to.
I think so too. My opinion on that, just real quick, is I think he's clean, and I think when you speak out against the cabal, they come after you. And it happens that he's in their party this time. It's terrible. You're the best, Joseph. I appreciate the call. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being part of this. Thanks for staying through the break, and we'll talk to you later. Have a great night. Okay.
All right.
Thanks a lot, man. You're the best. That's Joseph in the Bronx. Yeah, look, this is why we do this. Make friends all over the world with all manner of ideas, and this is exactly the point. Like I said, the internet is a scary place unless you're on troubled minds, and then we find A lot of amazing people. Love to hear your thoughts on this. 702-957-1037. We're talking a narrative foil. The villain with 1,000 faces is the inversion of Joseph Campbell's hero with 1,000 faces. Meaning, are we just creating these roadblocks for ourselves? And how deep does it get? James, anything to add before we go to Herschel?
Just that I think that's another part of that whole, the whole as in, it's not just us doing things to ourselves or other beings, other entities in the paranormal world doing things. It's other people too. And I think a lot of what Joseph just talked about there is good examples of that in a way.
Yeah. So something else. We got smart friends. We are. What does Princess Leia say? She's being dragged out in the Jabba the Hutt thing. We have powerful friends. You'll be sorry. It's great to have a lot of really smart people and great ideas flowing through this. What do you guys think? Are we in our own way, not just personally, but generationally? 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show just like this. Thanks for being patient, my man. Herschel, smell inside your nose. Do it now. How you doing, my man? Welcome to the joint. Should I play your intro music? Yeah, let's do this. Ladies and gentlemen, Herschel. Go right ahead, sir.
Okay. So is the sound okay or what?
Yep, you sound good. Go ahead.
All right. I'm going to read a story. But before I do, I'm not going to preface the story. I'm just going to read it and then we can talk about it when I'm done. And it totally flows with Joseph's conversation about the praying mantis. It totally flows with that in a way. Like it's just a different way of saying something very similar. But
go ahead.
About Adams really fast, Mayor Adams in New York. They're busting him technically for taking money from Turkey. Turkey is on the wrong side of all of the wars that we are funding. If he was taking money from one of the countries that we were in bed with, he would not be getting busted. I think that's what that's about.
He didn't have gold bars in his pockets like that one guy. That was it, Melendez, or what was the guy's name? Anyway, digress. A whole nother thing. They convicted him. He actually had gold bars in his pockets and in his closets or whatever. Anyway, go ahead. Let's tell the story.
So this is called Mitchell's Mission. I have several stories kind of along these lines. I feel like this is the easiest and the most simple one to read on the show. So it's called Mitchell's Mission. Mitchell had a mission. He really knew for sure that there was something wrong about Paul. He was going to prove it. Everything that Mitchell was able to do, Paul was able to do better. That just wasn't right because Mitchell was sure that he was better than Paul. He was going to prove that Paul should not be seen as being better than Mitchell. In science class, Paul was usually finished with his work the soonest, and he would have time to work on his drawings while the other kids finished. Mitchell knew there was something fishy about that. There was no way that Paul could finish before Mitchell and get a better score on his work because Mitchell was smarter than Paul. Mitchell was going to prove it. The next time there was a quiz, Mitchell watched Paul like a hawk because he knew for sure that Paul had to be cheating because Paul was dumb and Mitchell was smart. In between answering the quiz questions, Mitchell watched every move Paul made. He could see him because he was sitting behind him, one row over from Paul and a couple of seats back. This was a perfect vantage point for seeing what that rascal Paul was up to. Mitchell, can you come out in the hallway and see me, please? The teacher said it aloud from his desk. Mitchell felt special. The teacher wanted to see him, separate from the rest of the class. He went out to the hallway with the teacher with a smile on his face, thinking it must have something to do with his being so set apart from the other kids. Mitchell, I'm going to have to flunk your quiz because I saw you consistently watching Paul take his test. And I can't trust that you weren't looking at his pages. Mitchell was horrified. No, I was watching to see how he was cheating because he always gets done faster than me and gets a better score, and that's not right. I'm better than he is, Mitchell said. The teacher looked at Mitchell, puzzled and humored. Mitchell, I have to flunk your quiz. You're not making any sense. Keep your eyes on your own pages from now on, because next time I'll be talking to your parents. Mitchell's brow furrowed. He was fuming mad. He could barely contain himself. I can see that you're upset, Mitchell, the teacher told him. Stay in the hallway until you can compose yourself. When you are settled down, you can return to class. After a few minutes, Mitchell was able to keep his angered expression under control, but inside he was still fuming. As he walked past Paul's chair, he looked at him with contempt. There was a look of certainty on Mitchell's face. He was defiant. He had no idea why that teacher had it in for him. The next day, all the kids were in the cafeteria for an assembly. The chairs were set up in rows with aisles. Mitchell had an aisle seat, and he was watching behind him to see all the kids who got there after he did as they filed into the cafeteria. Here comes Paul, he said to himself. This is my chance to show everyone how clumsy he is. As Paul approached Mitchell's chair, Mitchell stuck his foot out in order to trip him up. As the very tip of Paul's toe sensed Mitchell's foot through his shoe, Paul simply adjusted to the obstacle and he gracefully hopped right over it, not really even noticing. Paul crossed his arms in disbelief because he trips all the time and he can't understand how Paul can do that. He must be on drugs, Mitchell thought to himself. No one could be so coordinated unless they're on drugs. I know he's hiding something. Mitchell's imagination was reeling with excuses and reasons for Paul's athletic natural reflexes. Later that day, Mitchell was shadowing Paul. He carefully followed him down the hallway and watched as he effortlessly greeted and spoke with the other students. Why is he being so nice? He's up to something, Mitchell thought to himself. He has some ulterior motive for always being so cheerful. No one is that happy. There was a teacher who was observing Mitchell, as Mitchell observed Paul. He seemed curious as to what was happening between these two students. He watched as Mitchell stood across the hallway from Paul. As Paul opened the combination lock on his locker, he watched Mitchell jot something down in his notebook. As Paul turned from his locker, he saw Mitchell. Hey, Mitchell, how's it going? I'll see you in science class later on. Mitchell feigned politeness with a fake smile, turned and kept walking in the other direction. The teacher who had been watching took mental notes on that entire event. The next morning, while his mother was asleep, before he left for school, Mitchell snuck into his mother's medicine cabinet and stole some pills. He placed them in a sandwich bag and stuck them in his pocket. He had determined that he couldn't find any proof, but he knew that he had to do the right thing and take care of that menace, Paul. It was in everyone's best interest. The community would be better off for it. The teacher who had been watching the scene from the day before kept his eye on Mitchell as Mitchell sneakily opened Paul's locker and placed the sandwich bag in Paul's locker. This teacher watched Mitchell walk away with a look of satisfaction on his face. He again made a mental note of the situation, but did not apprehend Mitchell for the obvious criminal behavior. The next thing Mitchell did was write some notes down in his notebook, and then he tore the page out of it and folded it. He went to the principal's office and, without being seen, placed the note on the counter while the people in the office were looking elsewhere. Later that day, during science class, Mitchell was gleeful when the principal and a police officer came into the room and escorted Paul out of the room. Everyone was concerned. No one knew what was happening, and the kids and the teacher were instructed to continue on with their day as they had nothing to be concerned about. Mitchell was certain that he had finally vanquished his nemesis forever. The next day, Mitchell was alarmed and confused when he saw that Paul was back at school. Instead of being vanquished, he was simply the object of gossip and embarrassment. Apparently, the cause of all the controversy was that he had been found to have a bag of laxatives in his locker, and he swore up and down that he had no idea how they got there. Mitchell was furious. He should have made sure the pills were something serious that would have gotten Paul kicked out of school and ruined his life. Mitchell was back to square one. As Mitchell was walking the hallway between classes, the teacher who had observed his exploits pulled him aside and asked him to go with him. Hey, Mitchell, come with me, he said. Mitchell became scared. He thought he was busted because he did notice the teacher in the hallway during his malevolence, but he thought he was careful enough. Apparently not. The teacher took him to his office and they had a conversation. Mitchell, you're special. Mitchell liked the sound of this because he always knew he was special. There is a special place in society with people with your skills and insights. How'd you like to be in a special law enforcement program where you can use your special abilities and your exceptional personality for the greater good of society? Mitchell always knew he was better than Paul. I'm better than Paul. I'm better than all these stupid kids, he said to himself as he walked to his next class. The end.
The end. And perfect timing, by the way. So hang tight. We're going to get back to you in just a second here, but that is fantastic. That is incredibly well written, and I enjoyed that immensely. And that's right in the line of what we're talking about tonight. There's a lot there to unpack. Great feedback in the chat, by the way, as well. We're here tonight just talking about a narrative foil, and a lot of things happen in that narrative, specifically the foil as well. Herschel, more from James if he's got it. We got Gaston with the hand up, and your calls as well. Don't go anywhere. More Troubled Minds coming up. Please mute up, Herschel, so we don't hear you breathing. Be right back. More Troubled Minds on the way. Don't go anywhere. Now you've done it.
Let's see.
Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming in all the places. We're on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting and 88.4 FM Auckland, New Zealand. Tonight we're taking your calls as we talk a narrative foil, the villain with 1,000 faces. Now, if you look at Joseph Campbell's seminal work, 1949, he published A Hero with 1,000 Faces. It's the human experience, synthesized from thousands and thousands of years of folklore and mythology. It's good stuff, right? We're all going through this, and he was explaining sort of in a Jungian manner, Carl Jung fits into this very well, how we're different, but we're the same. Our experiences are a lot the same. As James said very smartly as well, it's not or. Like, we feel these things together, and when you look at the larger context of it, I wonder if when you flip it on its head, it's not necessarily, well, it is. It's two things. Two things can be true at the same time. The hero's journey specifically, but also, what about us creating the narrative foil for ourselves? As I said previously, creating the bad guy, the antagonist, for no good reason, and when we don't need one. Because look, in any good story, and this is something I learned recently, they got these movie beats, right? You heard the beats? So they write these things to keep people interested. There's like, it's kind of very formulaic, but in that sense, where you're like, okay, this has to happen and this has to happen. It's very much the hero's journey, except it's created in a way where to keep you glued to the screen. So it's more manipulative. But anyway, if you flip that on its head, I lost my train of thought. 702-957-1037. Hirsch, maybe you can help us out. And James, if you got anything too, you're welcome to chime in. Go ahead, Herschel. Welcome back, Herschel. And great story there. I got some questions about it, but you didn't get any commentary. What you got on the topic tonight and the great story as well?
Well, you thought that Mitchell was the one who was evil.
Yeah.
But Mitchell's just a sick kid who doesn't know how to behave, and so he was used. So it was like the evil decided to commandeer his illness and use it for evil. So sometimes evil doesn't know it's evil, and sometimes it does know it's evil. And sometimes the evil that knows it's evil uses the thing that is just flawed, so that, that's like those situations exist in real life where what I described, like some people are recruited because they have certain personality problems, and sometimes a parasite will take another being over and use it, or you can use the idea of propaganda. That could be, the the political class using propaganda to manipulate an ignorant population, or a religion, like taking over the free will of a group of people and using it for something nefarious as opposed to what it was intended for, or all kinds of things like that, So I see Mitchell as a victim as much as I see him as a flawed person in this story. It was the teacher who was the evil,
Yeah, like that.
He was being purposefully and right.
Like that Eye of Sauron, sort of the
teacher
Orwellian.
knew what he was doing.
Yeah, totally, totally. Which
the teacher
again,
knew he was evil, and Mitchell just thought he was Mitchell was a narcissist who had delusions of grandeur. And he could be helped. And instead of helping him, the teacher used him.
And so, without the Eye of Sauron, leaving it to its own devices. And I was reading something recently too, talking about, if you guys have ever read the, is it Lord of the Flies, where they have the kids stranded on the island together, and they all end up with the Piggy and the Shale, the conch and whatnot. They're murdering each other as like tweens or whatever. There's an actual other aspect of humanity that is nothing like that, and that's again drama doomerism. And sort of left to our own devices, we probably won't do that. And my point in bringing that up is, what if you remove the teacher from that aspect? What happens to those kids? Do they end up fast friends and maybe BFFs or whatever?
That's a good question. Maybe Mitchell learns a lesson and matures and becomes a decent person if it weren't for that teacher. You never know. You know what I mean? Maybe somebody helps him, or maybe he just grows up. Maybe he just matures.
Do I sense a part two? Alternate universe for Mitchell?
Huh?
Do I sense a part two? Alternate universe for Mitchell?
Yeah. But that story was written in about 45 minutes.
Yeah, you are.
So that was purely from my subconscious.
Yeah, it's in there. And that's the thing, right? That's why we need to talk to each other and draw these ideas out, not just from ourselves, but from each other, inspire each other to jog the memories of our subconscious, to bring this stuff out, because it's real. This stuff is definitely real. Regarding the larger context of, let's say, us getting in the way of ourselves, what is your take on that? Because, of course, a narrative foil. Do you think that's a thing here? It's right down your alley with being the prolific writer you are. What do you think?
Oh, it's a thing. It's totally a thing. Yeah, it is. We could, I'm like along the lines of what Jen was saying. I really do think that there is a spiritual warfare in our universe. Like, I think that, I'm convinced of it in my time on Earth, that it's real. I'm 60. I don't know everything, but I've seen enough to know that it's a real thing. So I do think that those two ideas play off each other, the 1,000 faces of good and the 1,000 faces of evil, for sure. Like, yes.
Right on. And so how do we?
As in yes.
Yes. Okay. So, but yes plays. Here's the thing, though. So I asked this question yesterday or 2 days ago when we did this, or whatever. Like, they all blend together in my head. So how do we inoculate ourselves against the 1,000 faces of the villain? Is there a way to sort of, I don't know, a life hack you've learned, something that you can help me and the rest of us, that maybe something? What's your take on that?
I don't know. I know that I was exposed to some, I'm not going to get into detail, of course, but I know that I was exposed to some truly vile evil at a very young age. And my personal response is, I am not going to be like that. There's no way I want to be that kind of a person. That I don't know why I made that decision. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why I did that. But I knew that that was not where I was going. And I wasn't going to do it, and I was going to resist it. I just knew that. So I don't know how to answer that question. But I do know that if you have the opportunity to try to help somebody who is got that kind of a personality, people do different things. Like, oh gosh. Oh, I'm trying to think of this one illustration. But like, you can, oh, we talked about this before, when you were talking about going to the edge of knowledge and like looking down into your mind and making a decision, kind of, I can't remember what you called it, but you had a great word for it. You always make up these great words. And, you can either turn away because you're too busy to try to figure it out. You could get scientific and forensic and try to take your knowledge to the next level. You could just imagine something and write a science fiction story and maybe come up with an inspiration for somebody who's more forensic. Or you could take advantage of the ignorance of other people and become a propagandist and use it for your own benefit, like people do. So
tribe up.
I don't know how to. Yeah, I don't know how to get people to make the right decision. I don't know how to understand that, but for me, I just try to tell stories. That's my response. I write stories. That's my response. Your response is to do your show. You know what I mean? Like everybody tries to do it their way. Jesus tried to liberate his tribe from the Pharisees. Like people do, and other people exploited the tribe and used them for their own riches, like the Pharisees did. And Jesus tried to liberate them from that. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, why did he do that? I don't know what made him decide to do that. Maybe something terrible happened when he was a kid, and he said, you know what? I'm not going that way. Who knows?
Yeah,
I don't know what makes people choose what they choose.
Agreed. There's a weird. I always attribute everything to Mark Twain because it seems like he has the best quotes. But I think that in the latent space of my mind is trying to delve up a Mark Twain quote here about what is it? It's right there. It's on the tip of my tongue. I know it. But basically, the crux is that he's describing. It'll come to me. It's there. It's right there. It fits exactly with what you're talking about. And Mark Twain is so incredible. And by the way, I was doing some internet deep diving as I do, and it turns out that a lot of the Mark Twain quotes that were given are not Mark Twain at all. so I think that's probably what broke my brain right now.
Also,
Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Also, Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, that's another one.
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln.
Have you seen the internet meme where it's like Abraham Lincoln tells you which internet service to use, and then quoted Abe Lincoln. it's so stupid.
His name. I mean, we're kind of getting off track, but maybe not. But his nickname came not because he was honest. His nickname came because it was sarcasm. Like they called him Honest Abe as a joke. That was a joke. People don't realize that, but that was a joke. It was like they were being facetious.
He's a politician, after all. I mean,
Yeah.
like idolize politicians at your peril is in my back pocket eternally and forever. Because, hey, and by the way, I was just talking to Mrs. Strange about this a couple days ago. People are, as Herschel has very wisely said, temporary. So idolizing people is probably the wrong way about things. Let's think about the ideas. Idolize ideas and think and dream and think deeply, dream deeply. And, the people are secondary, tertiary. And that's the point. We got a call to get to. And at final thought, Hirsch, you're the best, brother.
Final thought. Everybody have a good night. And thank you for choosing the good team.
Amen. And tell them where to find your stuff real quick before I forget myself. Okay, I didn't forget.
Substack.com. That would be the way to find my stuff and my writing.
Commercial Herschel. Substack.
And my...
Go ahead.
Yeah, or you could go to any podcast app and look for Smell the Inside of Your Nose. Do it right now. You can find it that way too.
I'm doing it right now. Do it. Go follow Herschel. Links in the description, troubledminds.org/friends. Commercial Herschel, search it yourself. He's here on the network with us. Again, he does these flash fiction, 30 days, 30 stories. All that stuff is up on the radio feed, so listen to our network together. Herschel, you are the best. Appreciate you very much. Thanks for staying up late with us. Keep creating, keep dreaming, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great night.
All right, man. Later.
Bingo. James, anything to add before we go to Gaston and wrap this up? Herschel's the man, eh?
Yeah, the short story is not easy to write. I will just say that. I've tried a few. I prefer the novel for myself, and even that is a whole other level of hard. Great story, and yeah, it totally fits. And yeah, I think that's all I have for now. Looking forward to the rest of the show here.
Words are hard. that's a
They
t-shirt. Words are definitely hard. If try dialogue. If you guys have never written dialogue, try some dialogue. Dialogue's hard. That's not, go back to George Lucas and the contrived, Star Wars wooden dialogue that was made magical by Han Solo and Carrie Fisher or whatever. I mean, isn't it weird that her British accent kind of went away after Star Wars 2? So super strange. Anyway, I digress. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show just like this. Gaston, what's up, brother? Welcome back to Troubled Minds. How are you? Just unmute, and you are right on the join, right where you should be. Welcome to the thing. Unmute.
All right, how you doing, Mike?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
To call in, man. Usually, I'm just like the observer. I just sit there and listen all the time. But you brought up Joe Campbell topics in like twice in a row, and I just couldn't help it. So where do we start? We start with the hero's journey, right? Which is the cycle that is the call to action and the sometimes the denial, the acceptance of a greater mission than one's own life. And in that process, you get put through different obstacles. And if you realize what's going on, it becomes like a movie in that action. And then that movie ends abruptly and you return back home, as it was said earlier in the show, somewhere in the chat, with more stories, wisdom, but also maybe broken. Right. So like I was thinking about it, and the villain is every attempt at the universe to call you to action. You reject it, or maybe you go with it at first. But every time the universe tries to teach you something or gives you an obstacle, you get beat down and you become bitter to it. And that builds resentment towards not only the universe, but the individuals involved within those smaller scenarios.
Yeah, which is...
And I think...
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're on a roll. Go right ahead.
When we start pulling back from what Joe Campbell taught us in Hero of a Thousand Faces, we can look at how we would develop through culture the BBEG, like the big bad evil guy. And what you start seeing is it's not really that there is a big bad evil guy. There can be a agitator within the mix, but what we see is human nature taking hold and being amplified 1,000 times.
Which is where we're at. And not only that, like it does go both ways, sort of the fractal of both things. But it seems like, as usual, right, the doom scrolling, the propaganda, all the things we're always talking about, it seems more resonant. Like I said, look, if I wanted to run this up to the top or whatever, all I do is just got to go after people, right? Like you just pick a jerk out there, and then look at the dumb thing this guy said, and then you highlight how incredibly stupid they are, and then everybody laughs at him, and then like everybody kind of clamors to that energy. It is human resonance, and it's unfortunate, and it is, well, it is that villain with 1,000 faces, because there's plenty more than 1,000 out there. It's a million faces, a zillion faces. We are stuck in the space of creating unlimited villains, and I don't like it. So let's the buck stops here with us, and let's create unlimited heroes. That's what I'm about. But yeah, fire stuff. What else you got?
All right. So I was thinking about that, right? And breaks down that the hero of 1,000 faces is not 1,000 different heroes. It is one hero, but it's the story of that hero told through 1,000 different cultures. And in 1,000 different cultures, we do have concepts of good and evil. But the thing that you realize in those concepts of good and evil, what you get is arbitrary moral aestheticism, where you start making a choice based on what looks good to you. I'm kind of a nihilist sometimes. I always throw things through nihilism and then I try to bring it back down. In this case, like I see that we as a culture create the villain, but what we realize that the villain is just another obstacle created by the simulation for us to come together as the hero and overcome it by understanding that that obstacle is just a game, right? There's that saying that men toil in a world that God's built for play.
I'm with you.
Okay. In that I see that as not as like, you know, it's the goal for humanity to struggle with everything that comes their way, but we need to drop this the ego that we have, and that's also part of the hero's journey, is to drop the ego so that you can become something greater than yourself. And when we drop that ego and stop thinking that it's being focused specifically on us ourselves, we can analyze the problem from a much larger canvas. And the picture that it paints becomes simpler, but darker. And it's because what we did was, when somebody has something that sounds good, philosophically, we tend to push it, right? Like in doom scrolling, we start altering the algorithm to start showing us more and more of that one specific thing. Sometimes, and at first it looks minuscule. It's like a mouse, but what you don't realize is that mouse has the Rat King in the walls behind it. And we summon the Rat King because we keep on clicking on the mouse, not realizing that there's a bigger problem.
Yeah, which is so. What is it? So, is the bigger problem us, or is the bigger problem something else? Do you think there is an external presence to this? Like we talk about entities, you know, tulpas, this type of stuff, or is it all just manifestations of our own misery? to boil it down to one line, which sounds terrible, but is this what we're dealing with?
So, in that case, the tulpa would be the manifestation of our misery, right? Like, it's coming together and it's feeding off of everybody's impasses to what they're being called to in a greater sense. And I feel like if we're going to say that it's a tulpa, we fight tulpas by creating other tulpas that work against it. What's that new? Did you watch the new Terminator flick that came out recently?
I didn't.
There was
I'm caught up to part
you didn't?
2.
Okay.
All
right. I'm not.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. I'm not caught up on just about anything. But tell me, brief it for me.
All right. So essentially, Skynet's evil, right? It just decided humans are just querulous creatures, and we can't be stopped. It's just going to continue feeding. We're going to continue like feedback looping ourselves into oblivion. So it's just going to handle that for us. In the newest flick, I'm going to try to leave it as vague as possible. A competing AI was developed across the world, and that competing AI was developed to directly take on Skynet. And in the competition between these two AIs, the message became you had to trust the process in order for things to get better. If you challenge it at all points, you yourself are becoming the evil, because now you're trying to hold on to you're trying to hold on to the trauma that stopped you in your path along the hero's journey in the first place.
Which is what power manifested. Again, I feel like this is us. I feel like we're sort of in this circular motion of all these things, doing all of these things. Like we want to win, but also winning is terrifying because then what comes next? You know what I mean?
No, I mean I went through a lot of therapy for PTSD from like war stuff back in the early 2000s, and I had to learn the hard lesson that letting go was probably the only way to move forward. And once I like ontologically accepted that to hold on is to strangle my, like, to hinder myself, I actually started making like forward movement in my life. And sometimes I come back to this, like I get a challenge where I don't like the outcome of it, and I start questioning why did I have to go through it, and then I start becoming embittered around the details of it. And until I realized that it was just something really small, that hang up became like it became the villain because I made a mountain out of an anthill or a molehill. I think that's what we do to ourselves, and then we project that onto other people who might be working on their own journeys in different parts of that fractal.
Yeah, agreed. The wild part about it is, so if we're talking about the hero's journey and the foil and this again the villain and all the rest, this is manifested in the new space too, which is the AI space. We've talked about this quite a lot, where you have AI systems that are going to be nefarious, trying to, let's say, and again, this can be metaphorical as well, that fits with all the things we're talking about. But you have AI systems, nefarious systems, trying to crack into, certain things, trying to figure out what the password is, stuff like this, right? And that's the most basic. It gets way more complicated than that. But the only way to defend against that is not with a static system. You have to have a dynamic AI system fighting against that dynamic AI system trying to crack in. And so we have, once again, it's bizarre that we still have in the human space and in the technological space this exact same metaphorical circle of, we got these bad guys, we got these good guys, and well, here we are. Welcome to it. It's I don't know, man. This is a whole lot of human trauma packed into just a few hours here, but I think this goes back probably to the beginning in some capacity, right? The old, as they said, the proto-humans were violent or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, it really does make you think, like, is this just a natural component to existence? And it probably is. I mean, we do need stress in order to evolve, right? So, like, everything from the beginning was either eat or be eaten, and in that constant chase, we started to weaponize the next step up, and the next step, then our competitors weaponize what they were going to use to chase us. It probably is just like endemic to like consciousness in life.
It feels like it, doesn't it? It feels like we're stuck with this. But that's my point, and that's why I think if nobody points this out, nobody talks about this, then how do we break free from it? And that is always on my mind on a daily basis. I'm driving around like a knucklehead out there, and I'm like, well, what comes next? I don't know. It depends on the group, depends on the crew, depends on the challenge at hand, depends on what's happening in the moment. There's a lot of stuff happening, as James said, not or, it's and yeah, well said, all that. What else you got first, my friend? Go right ahead.
What else I got? I mean, I think that we have an edge on AI in that we're not brains in black boxes, right? So we can see outside of our immediate surroundings, and we can actually talk to people and not be prompted. We can address them. We can actually pull them in for conversation, and that gives us a huge advantage when it because when it's a combative scenario, because you can avoid combativeness through diplomacy. And I think that we've forgotten that we're not just our world is not the screen that's directly in front of us when we're doom scrolling. It's a much wider world.
Yeah, exactly right. Which is basically detach from the from the Black Mirror and touch grass and all the rest. As usual, right? There's a lot of actual recurring themes here. Go talk to real people. Don't talk to your AI girlfriend. Go talk to. I'm not saying you. I'm saying generally speaking, the world's about to become a wild place, and if we all sort of retreat to our caves. Well, in the old days, there were only so many caves, and we'd have to fight over them, right? Now, when you can create a fractal of unlimited digital caves, well, you can all just retreat to your cave, us collectively, not you, I mean me, us, everybody, and talk to our AI girlfriend, right? Everything's fine. Except,
oh man, I love my AI girlfriend. What are you talking about?
Yeah, right, exactly. Tell her I said hi.
Will do.
Well, thank you. Never mind. I was going to get crude. Anyway, okay. So this is important to consider as usual. Look, to me, and this is the funny part about these conversations, right? Like me, I think a lot of this stuff is incredibly resonant and important to consider and talk about, and flesh out all the ways of it. But there's people out there that are like, no, this guy's an idiot, right? This guy's a moron. He has no idea what he's talking about, right? There's war in the Middle East, and it's election season. Why is he talking? Okay. Cool, bro. Cool story, bro. I don't even care. I don't even care. Somebody else's narrative, I do not care. Meaning that the prevailing narrative, back to Mark Twain, which I flubbed the other quote, but attributed to Mark Twain. If you find yourself in the majority, it's time to stop and reflect. But I think that's a good way to end it. Unless you got a final thought for us, my man.
Touch grass.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, touch grass, because that's the only way we're going to get outside that black box.
Amen.
And thank you for having me on, Mike. Appreciate it.
Hey, pleasure. Thanks for listening. First time? I can't remember.
First time.
First time. Long time. First time. Hey, we love our long time first times, and now you broke the ice, and so you know how to get back here, and you're welcome back anytime, as you know. Great stuff. Appreciate you very much, my man.
All right. Have a good night. Take care.
Thanks, you too. And thanks for your service. You out there put your body and your mind and your soul and your heart on the line for everybody. And I appreciate that very much. So thank you. And have a great one. That's Gaston. Gaston on Discord. Look, making friends all the time. What's up, Deborah? Dream big, my friends. How you doing, Deb, in the chat? How are you? James, anything to add before we wrap this? A lot of ways to look at this. This is the whole point of this, is kind of wondering what is actually out there. And let me tell you what, regardless of the political season and the stupid debate or whatever the hell's going on in your mind, I promise you the world is far greater than that. And that's why this conversation is worthy in my mind, in my opinion. And I'm only little old me, but notice, as I always say, I'm me, you're you, together we're us. Final thought, James?
Yeah, just real quick. I have a real quick story based on a game. I'm going to basically tell you a really brief story about a game I played. I'm not going to say the name of the game because that's not important, but it really touches on this. So there's this RPG that I've played, and it's set in this world that was made by these two extremely powerful beings. And they had an argument over what should happen after that. And so they each made their own army over time. And there are all these plans and prophecies about this final war that was going to happen between these two sides. And one was supposedly good and one was evil. And the story involves the main character that you play in this game navigating through all this as it's all coming to a head. And near the end of the game, the leader of the good army, this one being, is destroyed by the evil being. And then you have to, of course, take out the evil being. But meanwhile, as this is going on, this good side is getting all ramped up and really focusing on how we're the good guys. And so this whole thing happens in this game. And after the main story ends, both of these beings, these leaders, are gone. While the good army says that the hero in this game is partly responsible for the death of their leader, and therefore you are an enemy of them. So at the end of this game, the story mode in this game, you become the enemy of basically everyone in this game, including the people that are supposed to be heroes. So isn't that odd how all that works?
Congratulations, you got promoted to your shadow self. Now everybody's coming to get you.
Exactly. Isn't it odd how that just all this is it's just so many stories are so similar, and you have good, bad, and yes, there's good and there's bad, but then there's also all the different degrees of it, and people thinking they're doing good while they're not really necessarily doing good because they're going after other people. All these things seem to come up again and again in folklore and on into present media.
And into the next iteration of fractal villains, which are an AI system for another day, which we will tackle another day. Because I don't know if you guys remember, we did a show. I called it my Troubled Minds opus at the time. We were writing stories and with AI and talking about it and kind of celebrating how great it was and how easy it was. But it was a recognition of a cosmic tale of AI systems eventually transcending the human space and Earth itself into the cosmos, and eventually competing with each other. So I wonder what the evolution of not consciousness, but the evolution of AI, given a million years, might look like. I think it might be more terrifying than we ever dreamed. Fire stuff, James. You're the best. Thanks for staying up late with us. I know you didn't intend to, but I appreciate it very much. You're the best.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, I remember that show. If I'm not mistaken, it did involve two AIs, didn't it? It had the one that had evolved, and the one that people made after the fact to combat that one that had evolved. So isn't that funny how I'm wondering if the people that made that Terminator show maybe listened to Troubled Minds, possibly? I don't know.
Or Terminator 6 coming to you after they rip us off and talk about it. You're the best, James. Thanks again for staying up late with us. Feel better as soon as possible, and we'll talk to you soon. You have a great night, brother.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. That's that. Look, it's a blessing. It's an honor to have so many smart friends. What's up, Taxi Grave? I see you over there on Kick. How you doing? Yeah. Look, no answers. I think, by the way, just a reminder that having no answers is pretty freeing, because it means that anything that comes at you, if you haven't locked yourself into some dogma somewhere or some way, not that I'm completely free, because we're all slaves in some degree, right? Of somebody else's mind or whatever, propaganda, whatever you want to call it. But trying to free yourself of those things means that you can actually look at things outside of systems. And we talked about this in the past, that it is difficult from within a system to measure how big the system is. But what I'm describing is basically the Stoic mindset, how to kind of measure yourself within the system and recognize what's happening to you. Become a ghost, which is wild because in the Matrix, remember the ghost? His name is Ghost. Anyway, I digress. That's a whole thing for a whole nother time. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know, but I ask that you free yourself of dogmas. Just a request from little old me. Not entirely, just philosophically. And ask if you really need the stuff we've been fed since we were born. If you want to help Troubled Minds, help our friends, troubledminds.org/friends. Please, please, please. So many great people there. So many amazing folks that make this show go. And if you should be on that list, look, it doesn't take much. Spread the word, let people know, retweet some stuff or drop some links or whatever. It doesn't take much. It is a big club and you are in it. So if you have a social media, you got a blog, you got a whatever that you want to share, you let me know. I'll put you on that list. Hit me up at troubledmindsradio@gmail.com. I will add you to that list. If I've missed anybody, that's things fall off my plate. Don't take it personal. I'm just incredibly busy. And yeah, so please, please, please help our friends. If you should be on that list, you're welcome. That's that. If you want to help Troubled Minds directly, you know what to do. Spread the word. Let people know a conversation is happening where even on debate night, we're not going to talk about the crappy debate between two knuckleheads from God knows where, talking about binary nonsense and yeah. We'll talk about something else, something a little more esoteric, something a little more cosmic. That's that. If you want to help Troubled Minds directly, you got a few bucks to spend. I appreciate it very much. Links are in the description. troubledminds.org. Right there. Or no. Whatever. Links in the description. I need to put a help us page, whatever. I'm such a disaster. Anyway, thank you for spending your time and energy with us. As I always say, this is the truth of the matter, as far as I can tell, because the truth is a slippery fish. But I'm pretty sure this is the truth in this case. Your time is a currency you can't get back, so I'm eternally blessed by every minute you spend with us, so thank you for that. As we finish, it goes exactly like this. Be sure, be strong, be true. Thank you for listening. From our troubled minds to yours, have a great night.